True scary story about Las Vegas that no one tell you.
I was 23 years old when this happened. I'm 27 now, and there hasn't been a week that has gone by that I haven't thought about this trip. To celebrate our friend Andrew's 21st birthday, we were taking him on a trip to Vegas. He was always a laid-back and kind of shy dude, and we all knew that he hadn't yet done the deed. So, we planned on getting him really drunk and, to put it bluntly, getting him laid. We checked into the Carriage House Hotel, which was one of the more affordable hotels that we could find. We had 2 separate rooms, as there were 7 of us in total. There were 4 of us in the room that I was in, and Andrew was in the room with us. The first thing we did was eat, of course, as we were all starving. We then hit the casinos just to say that we did it. Out of the 7 of us, only 1 left with more money than they had entered with. We checked out a bunch of different bars, and as the night went on, things got more blurry, and everything got funnier. We got into a nightclub that was going wild. We caught 2 of our friends, John and Eddie, walking out with girls. They shot us the about to get lucky look, and we understood. The rest of us were trying to pressure Andrew into approaching a girl, but even in his drunken, somewhat loosened up state, he was still too shy to approach anybody or even dance. We got to the point where we were desperate to find somebody for Andrew. We could already foresee that he wouldn't meet any girls at this rate during the whole trip. We left the club in search of a working girl. You may think our actions were weird, but like most people at that time, we were completely hammered. We approached a girl walking alone, acting like a couple of idiots, and asked her if she would be interested in hanging out with our friend Andrew, who was very noticeably not quite as messed up as us, but still intoxicated nonetheless. The girl wasn't anything special, I could say that even in the state I was in, but we wanted Andrew to have a good time. I don't quite remember what she said in direct response to me, but I remember her voice being slightly deep to the point that I looked at my friend. I also have a slight memory of her analyzing Andrew from head to toe. Again, I don't remember what she said, but it led to her grabbing Andrew's arm and the 2 of them walking off down the sidewalk. We laughed as we could see how awkward Andrew already felt. None of us thought it was weird, though. But just out of curiosity to see what was going to go down, we decided to trail behind them. They didn't seem to exchange any words. In fact, it appeared as if the girl was pulling him. We followed for about 15 minutes. I would guess it could have been much longer, but I wouldn't really know. It was a darker and quieter street. The 2 of them stepped into what we assumed was an apartment building, and we all left. We were so proud and happy for him too. There was no point in us waiting there, so we went back to the club. At around 2 in the morning, we headed back to the hotel. Andrew wasn't in either of the rooms. I was starting to sober up a little, and a bit of concern began to arise in me. John and Eddie, who weren't with us earlier, were shocked to hear about what happened. We all kind of assumed Andrew was just spending the night with the girl. Still, it was out of character for Andrew to do anything like this, so it was just weird. I texted him and tried calling him. He never answered. My friends told me to relax, and I crashed minutes later. I woke to a ringing sound. At first, with my mind still in sleep mode, I assumed it was an alarm clock and tried tapping at my phone to turn it off. As my head began to return to reality, I realized the phone was ringing. It was Andrew's number. I literally felt my heart drop for whatever reason. I told my friends, who were already awake from the ringing. I answered and was greeted with heavy breathing on the other end. It was Andrew, and he sounded as if he were having some kind of panic attack. I put him on speakerphone so everyone could hear. Andrew began whispering into the phone. Most of it was incomprehensible, but we made out some of what he said. We heard him whisper, "It was that woman. Guys, you gotta get over here right now." We tried to engage him, but he wasn't answering anything we were saying. The other end went silent. We were all basically screaming into the phone, asking if he was all right, where he was, and what was going on. I was already shaking in my skin at that point. What happened next only made it 10 times worse. Something broke the silence on the other end, the sound of a door being opened with force, followed by the shrill and horrific screaming of Andrew. Then the call abruptly ended. We were all freaking out. I called the police and tried to remember the address or at least the street. We were so messed up the night before that I couldn't even remember the route we had taken. One of my friends claimed he did, though. The police came over to the hotel and escorted us. My friend seemed to remember exactly where the building was. He guided the police past the club, down the side roads, and eventually to the building. 2 officers from the front car went inside while we were told to wait by the other car. A few minutes felt like hours as we waited in anticipation and fear of the worst. Finally, one of the officers stepped out. She came over to us and asked if we could come inside to confirm if the dead body belonged to Andrew. I felt like the entire world just collapsed on my head. John and Jerry both started crying. They didn't want to go in. So, I followed the officer into the building. It turned out the place wasn't an apartment at all, but rather some kind of dark, abandoned storage building. Inside, there was a dead body leaning out from an open closet. The face was emotionless, the mouth lifelessly hung open, staring up at the ceiling. It was horrible, but it wasn't Andrew. I knew it right away. The most noticeable feature was the boy's blonde hair, while Andrew had black hair. The officers had already scoped the whole place out, but they didn't know what to do. I took a look in the closet, hoping Andrew might be hiding there. Nothing. Not even a cell phone. We all did our best to forget about it. But a little more than a month later, I got a phone call in the middle of the night once again. I picked up. There was bad reception, and nobody was saying anything. I was about to hang up when a faint, yet familiar voice said, "Jesse." "Andrew." I yelled. The sound of a door slamming in the background on the other end was the last thing I heard before the call ended. He didn't pick up after the 5 times I tried calling him back. So what did I do? I called the police and had them trace the call. The call wasn't coming from Nevada at all. No, it was coming from New Jersey, in fact, our own town, and from a house not too far away. The police said they were sending somebody to the house, but that wasn't enough for me. I had to go there myself. I GPS'd the address, hopped in my car, and floored it the whole 5 minutes it took to get there. It was a vacant house on a corner. I sneaked up to the front door and put my ear against it, listening for anything inside. Nothing. I crawled around to the back, where I found an open window. I listened for a moment and heard the faint sounds of small snaps and cracks coming from upstairs, the kind of sounds you hear from someone standing or moving on wood. I was sure he was in there. I hopped inside, but I didn't even get to begin my search before noticing something at the edge of the hallway. Someone was standing there, facing me, but I couldn't see their face. All I could see were their pale, exposed legs and long black hair hanging down past their shoulders. It was a woman. I felt sick to my stomach, anticipating her charging at me like in some kind of horror movie. But instead, she turned and ran in the opposite direction. I heard the sound of a door slamming shut, followed by footsteps stomping downstairs. Then, yelling from a man and a woman. There was an even heavier pair of footsteps now stomping up the stairs. That was my cue to run. I left the house and dove into the bushes. Not even 5 seconds later, someone stepped out onto the porch. For the first time in months, it seemed as if luck was finally on my side. A police car pulled up to the curb, its siren flashing. I heard the guy on the stoop mutter something before slamming the door behind himself. The police followed him inside. Apparently, the idiot didn't even lock the door. I stayed hidden because I didn't want to startle the cops and end up with a bullet in my skull. I waited by the car out front. Minutes later, one of the officers came outside with the guy in cuffs. I introduced myself and warned them that there was also a woman in the house. But they never found the woman. In fact, one of the bedroom windows was completely open, which implied that she had escaped. Andrew was found upstairs, locked in a closet. He was in horrible shape, malnourished, his hair long and dirty. You could smell him from a mile away. The police ran the records for the man. He was never married, so they had no way of finding out who the woman was. He even claimed that he had only known her for a day. Nothing made sense, and it still doesn't. Andrew admitted that he was raped, beaten, and hardly fed. I can't even imagine admitting something like that to someone. The girl who originally escorted him to that building was only there to collect payment from what Andrew described as the operators. For some reason, they forced Andrew to give them his hometown and the addresses of everyone who was with him that night. This explained why they were in our town, but not why they were in our town. What were their intentions? To kill us? To add us to whatever kind of sex slave operation they were running? I'm the only person Andrew has told out of our group of friends. Whenever somebody asked about it, I just said I didn't know what happened. Things were finally starting to look up, until a few days later. I got a text message from a random number late one night saying, "You." Whoever it was blocked me immediately, so I couldn't respond. I just blocked him back. It happened again the next week. And then the next month. Sure, I had the idea that it had something to do with the incident, but I had no idea it would be taken as far as it was. One night, I woke up to a hint of brightness in my room. There was light outside in the backyard, shining ever so slightly through the closed blinds. It wasn't sunlight. It was the backyard porch light. I could see a shadow moving in front of the blinds. Somebody was definitely out there. I couldn't see much through the crack at the bottom of the blind, so I inched it up ever so slightly. There was somebody standing by the window, looking right at me, as if they were waiting for me. But they were gone before I could even think about grabbing my phone to get a picture of them. I strongly believe it was that woman I saw in the house. That was the last time I saw or heard from anyone involved in this. Nothing about this whole situation has made a single ounce of sense, even with the best explanation Andrew could give me. I don't see a point in getting into how Andrew and everyone else is doing. It's nothing interesting. The only thing I can say is this: I'm waiting. Waiting for the next time I see any of these animals. When that happens, I'll be ready to call the police, or take them on myself.
My sugar daddy asked me for weird favors. His Tinder profile said he was 45, but he looked to be in his early 30s at most, looking for a sugar baby. $700 weekly. No sex. It sounded too good to be true, but, as a broke university student, I was willing to take my chances. I swiped right, and Tinder let me know it was a match. His message came seconds later. "Hey there, sweetheart." I cringed at that word. I hated it, but $700 was $700. So I sucked it up and replied, "Hey." His name was Jack, and he told me he owned his own business, although he never specified what kind of business it was. We talked for a while before he asked me for my Venmo to send me the first payment. After a few minutes, I got the notification. I stared at the $700 for at least 20 minutes, expecting to wake up from a dream at any second. But it wasn't a dream. "You still there?" I clicked on the message. "Yeah. Sorry. If you don't mind me asking, what are you looking for in return?" I stared at the chat until he replied, "I'm just looking for you to do a few favors for me." That sounded like it was going to be sexual to me. Like what? For example, "The first thing I need you to do is pick up a delivery for me." That sounded innocent enough, but I was still expecting there to be some kind of twist. $700 to pick up a package? Come on, even I wasn't that naive. From the post office or something? "Number, I'll send you the address, but I'd rather not do this through Tinder. You got Kick? Or you can give me your number." Kick? What was this? 2011? I decided to give him my number instead, and he texted me the address immediately, followed by the address to his house, where I would have to drop off the package. I'm not home right now, but there's a key on the bottom of the blue flower pot near the door. Go inside and put the package on the coffee table in the living room. Make sure that you lock the door when you go inside the house, and then lock it again when you leave. I grabbed my car keys and wallet and got into my car, putting the address into Google Maps. Got it. OMW. My phone buzzed as I backed out of my driveway. I'm serious. Lock the door both times, please. I thought that was a little excessive, but I promised him that I would. The house looked abandoned. It had a broken chain-link fence around it with a small door that was hanging on to dear life. It stuck out like a sore thumb, surrounded by houses that were a lot nicer than this one in comparison. You here for Jack's shit? I looked up to see a man standing in the open doorway of the house. He took up almost the entire space, his head skimming the top of the door frame. He was huge, in height and muscles, and his entire torso was covered in tattoos. Yeah, I guess, I replied, not moving from my spot on the sidewalk. Stay right there, he said. I did. I actually don't think I would have moved if he had asked me to. I looked around and realized that there was no one else on this street. I was a 21-year-old woman alone in the street. I gripped my car keys. A few minutes later, the man came back out carrying a cardboard box. It was about the size of a shoebox, but stained and damp on some of the corners. Can you open your car? He asked. I opened the trunk, not wanting that inside on my car seats, and he set it in. All right, there you go, he said. Thanks, I replied. I walked around to the driver's side of the car and opened the door. Oh, and one more thing, he said. I looked at him. Watch out, he said. I didn't reply. I blasted my music as I drove to Jack's house, hoping it would drown out my anxiety. It didn't. I parked my car in the stone driveway and stayed inside the car, admiring the house. It was a huge house, with stone pillars on the front porch, and the greenest grass I had ever seen in my life. I turned the car off and got out. I grabbed the package and walked to the front door, getting the key from where he said it would be. I opened the door and stepped in, closing it behind me. I thought about what he had said, about locking the door when I got inside. I thought that was a little overboard, but as I stared at the closed door, something made me reach out and lock it. I walked inside, my feet cushioned by the thick maroon carpet, and admired the inside of the house. All the furniture was wooden and looked incredibly expensive. I would probably finish school a dozen times with the money that it took to furnish this place. I set the package down on the coffee table, and as I walked back to the door, I heard a phone ringing from somewhere inside the house. I froze. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. I took it out to look. Don't answer any calls that aren't from Marvin. I put my phone back and followed the sound of the phone, poking my head into a few different rooms before I found it in an office. I walked over to the desk and looked at the caller ID. Incoming call from Jack. That was odd. I grabbed my phone to look at the message again. I was starting to get a little bit creeped out and decided I wouldn't answer, just to be safe, and left the house, remembering to lock the door as I left. I've done a few more favors for Jack since then. I drove a BMW to a random park in another city, only to get out and drive a different car back to Jack's house. He had me meet one of his employees at lunch, who then gave me a briefcase to deliver to the first house I had gone to, and told me he would know if I looked inside. On several occasions, he asked me to drive down to that same house and stay with the guy, whose name was Julio, for a certain amount of time. In total, I've made around $3,500. Most recently, Jack asked me to stay in his house overnight. I woke up to a text message from him. I need you to spend the night at my house. I hadn't ever seen him in person, but I had talked to him on the phone a few times. He proceeded to tell me he would pay me $1,000 to spend the night at his house, provided that I followed a few rules. I drove to his house that evening. The driveway was empty, and it normally was, but the porch light was on. I walked up, unlocked the door, went inside and then locked it again. Everything in the house looked the same. Jack had told me over the phone that he would leave the list of rules on the dining room table. I set all my stuff down in the living room. My bags looked like garbage compared to the fancy furniture in there. I wandered into the kitchen and then to the dining room. Sure enough, there was a piece of paper on the wooden table, held down by an empty glass. Lock the door when you come in. Only answer calls from Marvin. Don't turn on any faucets between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. Don't open the door for anyone, no matter who they say they are, after 10 p.m. If the door to the closet at the end of the hall is open, sleep in the library. If closed, sleep in any of the bedrooms. The gardener comes at midnight. If he starts knocking on the windows, hide. Turn the TV on and let it play on static through the night. Do not forget to do this. Help yourself to anything in the fridge. I'll pay you in the morning. Good night. I made sure to follow all the rules. To be honest, I was regretting my decision. But seeing as I was already here and I was getting paid, I decided to stay anyway. I figured as long as I followed all the rules, I'd be perfectly fine. Still, it felt a little odd. What was this? A haunted house? Nevertheless, I lounged around the house for a few hours, as I was planning on going to sleep around 9 since that's the time that all the weird shit would begin to happen. At 8:50, I brushed my teeth, using the faucet for the last time before 9. I checked the closet in the hallway, and upon seeing that it was open, I moved my stuff into the library and got ready to sleep on the couch. I locked the doors just in case, and laid on the couch, scrolling through my phone. I hadn't gotten any more messages from Jack, and I started to think up scenarios and reasons as to why he had such strict, peculiar sets of rules in his house. I had dozed off at some point because, at exactly 10:16 p.m., I was woken up by the doorbell ringing. I was about to get up to check, but then I remembered the rule. Don't open the door for anyone, no matter who they say they are. After 10 p.m., I stayed on the couch, trying not to move, paranoid that they would hear even the slightest sound. It's the police. Open up. I didn't move. Hello? It's the police. Open up or we're coming in. I still didn't move, but I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. There was silence for a while after that. Then the doorbell rang again. Hey, it's Jack. Let me in. It sounded like Jack, but still, I didn't get up. He would have a key, wouldn't he? Why would he need me to let him in? This continued for almost a full hour. Different people would ring the doorbell, announce themselves, and then disappear when I didn't respond. I was finally able to fall asleep, and the gardener never came. When I woke up the next morning, I heard someone in the kitchen. I got up slowly and unlocked the door as quietly as possible, taking my phone with me and walking across the living room and into the kitchen. I stopped at the entrance and peered in. It was Jack. He was standing in front of the stove, stirring something as the coffee machine brewed coffee on the counter behind him. Hey, good morning, he said when he saw me. Hi, I replied, nervous. I hadn't seen him in person before, but he looked exactly like his pictures online. Scrambled eggs? He asked, motioning to the pan with a wooden spoon. Yeah, thanks, I replied, walking over to take the plate from him. I ate my breakfast and drank some coffee in silence. So how was it? He asked. It was okay. Nothing super freaky happened. I replied. Cool, he replied. There was an awkwardness in the room. I think I'm going to go now. I have class. I trailed off. I didn't, but I really wanted to get out of there. Oh no, yeah, sure. I'll talk to you some other time, he replied. I grabbed my stuff and he walked me to my car. I could see him standing in the driveway staring at me as I left. When I got home, I unpacked all my stuff and noticed that I still had the list with me. I sat on my bed and read it again. I felt my body tense up as I realized that I had forgotten something. Turn the TV on and let it play on static through the night. Do not forget to do this. Turn the TV on and let it play on static through the night. Do not forget to do this. Do not forget to do this. I stared at the words on the page until they lost meaning. Beside me, my phone buzzed, snapping me back to reality. It was the $1,000 payment. I looked at my phone and then back at the list. Maybe it wasn't an important step, As I was thinking this over, a text from Jack came in. I'm not in town right now. I should be back next week, so you're free from running any more errands for me until then. Just sent the payment. Go do something fun. I stared at the message and read it again, and once more for good measure. I'm not in town right now. I thought back to this morning, and how Jack was in his house, how he gave me breakfast. I'm not in town right now. Within minutes, a new text came in, this time from a number that I didn't recognize. Did you forget to do something? The text was followed by a picture of Jack, or whoever this version of Jack was, standing in front of the TV. I didn't respond. Next came another picture. This one was of the outside of my house. It was followed by another text. Watch out. It all started because I had to go to the bathroom. I was on my way home after having worked a double, and if I had just gone before I left work, it wouldn't have been a problem. I was in such a hurry to get home because I knew I was going to have to go back and do it again in 8 hours. My relief had called out about 30 minutes before my shift ended, and though the manager was sympathetic, he said I had to stay unless I could find someone to work for me. 8 hours later, I staggered out the front door and into my car so I could go home and pass out in time to do it again tomorrow. I was about halfway home when I was struck with the overwhelming urge to use the bathroom. It wasn't one of those you can hold it kind of warnings. It was a you are going to pee in the toilet or pee in your pants, but you only have about 2 minutes or so to pull the trigger on that decision kind of warnings. I was about 20 minutes from home, and every place I passed on the way was dark and locked up for the night. I had just about decided to pull over to the side of the road when I saw the comfortable glow of a Dollar General sign in the distance. I pulled in, figuring if it was actually open I'd use their bathroom, and if not I'd just go behind the building. It was about 10:30 at night, and I was surprised when I saw that the open sign was lit up. The sign was a little different too, not the usual Dollar General logo, and as I got closer, I saw that I had pulled into a Dollar General beyond. It wasn't a type of Dollar General I was familiar with, but beggars could hardly be choosers. I heard the comfortable ding of the automatic door as I walked inside, and it put me at ease. The personal speakers that some manager had rigged into the sound system were playing soft rock from one of the local stations, and the overhead fluorescents flickered and crackled in a way that makes you think they were just about to go out. The doors closed behind me with an almost ominous thump, but I shook it off as my bladder throbbed again. I found a tired-looking blonde woman standing behind the counter, and she seemed barely coherent. She didn't even look at me when I walked in. And when I asked for the bathroom key, she turned her head minutely and offered me a fluorescent pink fly swatter with a key hooked to the bottom. I nearly ran to the bathroom, slipping the key in as I opened the door and paused in confusion. I opened the door to find another Dollar General. It was the same as when I went in. The same stagnant soft rock played over the speakers. The same fluorescent buzzed overhead. The same tired salt and pepper fake linoleum scuffed underfoot. I was a little mesmerized as I stepped inside. The feeling of vertigo momentary but awful as I let the door snap shut behind me. My need to pee was forgotten as I looked around, and I would be too distracted to remember it for a while. There were only 2 differences between this Dollar General and the one I had stepped out of. One was the disappearance of the blonde woman. I had thought maybe I had just gotten turned around somehow. Just a tired trick of the mind until I walked up to the counter. The woman was gone. But it wasn't something that seemed odd right away. She had probably gone into the office to count the drawers so she could go home, and I rang the bell on the desk as I called for help. I rang it a dozen or so times, calling loudly for someone, but no one ever came out. I jumped the counter then, but the office behind it was empty. I checked the back, checked every aisle, but they were empty too. The second difference was that all the doors out of the store were locked and refused to budge. It was getting too weird by now, and I really wished I had just peed behind the store. I went to the doors and pushed on them, looking for a lock or something, but there was nothing on the smooth surface. There was no mechanism to unlock the door, either. The door was simply unmoving. I went into the back, meaning to go out the back door, but that door was also locked. After about 30 minutes of looking for a key or some way out, I sat down on the counter and decided that maybe I had been locked in for the night. The blonde had looked half brain dead and had probably just left suddenly and locked me in. If she had, then why leave the lights and the music on? I pondered it for a few minutes, but eventually, I just shrugged and decided to call the police so they could come get me. I didn't want one of the cops to drive by on a routine patrol and think I was stealing. What's more, I had to be back at work before Dollar General opened up. My boss was not going to be happy if I was late, and was unlikely to believe I was trapped in a Dollar General, so I took out my cell phone. But when I dialed 911, all I got was weird static. I dialed a few more numbers, but each time I did, the static got louder and angrier. And eventually, I stopped trying. The 5G, however, still worked, so I guess that's lucky for you guys. I decided that if I couldn't reach them, I would at least tell them what was going on. I opted to make a sign so that if someone saw me, they wouldn't think I was here robbing the place. So I set about looking for something to make a sign with. And luckily for me, it was a Dollar General. About 2 minutes later, I had a sign made out of construction paper taped to the door, letting them know that I was stuck in here and needed help. After that, I stepped away from the door and tried to decide what to do now. My bladder groaned again, and I remembered why I had stopped here in the first place. I opened the door to the bathroom and hey, wouldn't you know it, but there was another Dollar General in there. I must have opened the bathroom door and stepped through about 4 times before I just decided to go in the water fountain. My business completed, I decided to have a bite. I walked around, finding some cold sandwiches and chips, a soda, and a little ice cream, and took it to the front. The self-checkout wouldn't work, so in the end, I just left some money on the counter and figured I'd pay the difference when they opened tomorrow. As I sat eating, the food balanced in my lap as the law chair I'd found allowed me to eat off something other than the floor. I found myself feeling oddly uncomfortable. This wasn't the kind of place you were supposed to eat in. It was tantamount to camping in a car wash, and it felt like something was watching me as I munched my food. I had set up near the door, and as I found my eyes straying back to it again and again, I noticed something else strange. I was next to a pretty busy road, and approaching midnight or not, I should have seen headlights of some kind by now. We were right beside a pretty busy highway, and the idea that not so much as a log truck of a delivery vehicle had cruised by all night was very strange. It was then that I noticed, after looking back at the door for about the 10th time in 2 minutes, that my sign was gone. I left my food in the chair, thinking maybe it had fallen down, but it was nowhere to be found either. The tape I had used to stick it up there, the markers I had left on the counter, even the package of poster board was gone. I walked around saying hello again, thinking someone had come and found my mess before cleaning it up, but I was still alone in the store. I made a new sign and hung it up in the window, and as I returned to my slightly melted ice cream, I kept looking back at it. I looked at it mistrustfully, waiting for it to disappear again, but it stayed stuck to the door just as the last one had, until it had suddenly gone missing. That was, after finishing my little dinner. I grabbed some bedding from an end tap near the middle of the store and some chair pads from the same area. I figured I wouldn't get more than a few hours before someone came in and asked what the hell I thought I was doing, and settled in to get some sleep. I tried to send a text to my boss to let him know what was going on, but the text just sat there unsent. I sighed and closed my eyes, getting comfy as I tried to fall asleep. I nodded off eventually and woke up 10 hours later to much the same scene. I was a little concerned when I looked at my phone and saw what time it was, but I was even more concerned when I realized the sun still wasn't up. No one had tried to call me, and no one had arrived to ask me what the hell I was doing. And that was when I sat down to write this. As I said, the 5G seems to work very well, but I can't so much as make a phone call from my phone. The outlets seem to work as well, and there are plenty of chargers here to keep my phone from dying. I don't seem to be in any danger of starving either. I have food, water, and power, but no way out. I don't know how long I can stay here or wherever I am, but it appears I have found something incredible and inescapable. It's funny. My friends and I used to joke about the number of Dollar Generals in any given place. They always seemed to get closer and closer to each other, and I once made a joke about how one day I'd turn down an aisle and find myself in a completely different Dollar General. Enter the back area, a new Dollar General location. Fall through a hole in the floor. You'd drop right into a newly constructed Dollar General. We'd laugh about it over our beers, but it seems a lot less funny now. I'll keep you all posted. I suppose this would count as my first day in Dollar General Beyond, and I'll let you know if I discover anything new, if you come across one. I cannot stress enough to avoid Dollar General Beyond at all costs. If you do, for God's sake, don't enter the bathroom. There are forces at work that I don't think anyone understands. Hey everyone, I have no idea how long I've been in the Dollar General Beyond, but I figure it's been about a week. I've been keeping notes in my journal. It's the purple one with the glitter cover, if you must know, so I could update you guys on what I've learned about this place. It isn't a lot. I'm still getting used to the jab, but I have made a few little discoveries. First, let me answer a few of your more burning questions. Yes, all my social media works, but most of my friends seem to think I'm just having a go at them. The ones who do call the police for me message me back and tell me to stop messing around. I've had my account seized on Facebook because they think I've been hacked, but Reddit still seems to work pretty well. Some of you have brought up the bathroom situation. I can pee down the sink in the back, but for number twos I've set up a bucket with a bag in it. I've been putting the bags in the manager's office and just kinda don't go in there. The doors do not open and the glass will not break, as I will explain later. Keep them coming though, guys, and I'll answer some more on the next one. My first discovery was that the things inside the jab are finite. Jab is what I started calling the place to save time, because spelling out Dollar General Beyond got old pretty quickly. The stuff that's here doesn't seem to spoil. At least none of the packages have dates on them, but they do run out. You'd think it would take you a while to go through all the stuff in the store, but you'd be wrong. 7 sleeps, since there are no days here. After I got stuck here, I was out of the sandwiches I liked. The coffee drinks I usually drink were starting to get a little low, and the ice cream was gone. I may have been doing a little stress eating, but most of it is the unnoticed replenishment that we all take for granted. I tried to find more in the back, but the back is just a big open space. There are some hand trucks back there and a couple of those pump-up lift things, but no product to put on the shelf. This leads me to the second thing. There is no way out of the jab. The doors are still locked and I can't see anything out of the windows. There may be things out there, but they seem content to ignore me or are unaware that I'm here. The doors in the back are also unmoving, and I looked for something big to break the front windows with, but that only solidified rule number 2. I found a lug wrench in the automotive section, but it simply bounces off the glass and doors. It doesn't seem to damage them. Nothing beyond little dents. And I finally just gave up when I got tired. While I was laying on the floor, my chest working like an accordion, I noticed the ceiling. I scampered to the back and found a ladder near the wall that they probably used for changing out the ceiling tiles and took it to the floor so I could climb into the ceiling. I thought that if I could make a hole in the roof, it's just a green metal roof, I could get out and see where I was. I took some cutting implements and got the biggest ladder I could find in the back. But as I slid one of the ceiling tiles aside, I saw not an attic space but a giant pulsating void. I reached a hand out to it, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it. It was as if something was repelling me. And after standing up there for a few minutes or hours or however long I was on that ladder, I climbed down. I try not to think about it if I can help it. I've started doing things in the store to keep my mind busy, and they've sort of colored my days. If day 1 was figuring things out and day 2 was getting settled, then day 3 was when I sat down to color. I had meant to go get some mouthwash when I saw the rack of color books on the stationery aisle. There were all kinds of coloring books. Avengers and princesses, dinosaurs and sea creatures. And before I knew it, I had a pack of colored pencils opened and was filling the pages. I spent most of that day coloring in animals of various kinds or superheroes or the intricate designs in the adult coloring books. Heck, I colored in some of the regular books too, and I grabbed a couple of the more interesting ones to read off the spindle rack at the end of the aisle. On day 4, I set about building as many of the Lego sets that were on the toy aisle as I could. You wouldn't imagine that a Dollar General would have a lot of them, but I spent the better part of 12 hours putting Legos together. Spaceships, dinosaurs, buildings, vehicles. I assembled them all and began flying or driving them around the floor half-heartedly. By the end of the day, I was just throwing them at the front door and watching them smash to pieces. I told myself it was to make it harder for anything coming in, but I really just liked the way they went to pieces when they hit the glass. Day 5 was spent cooking and making crafts. I used the gas stoves they sell to cook a few dishes from the cookbooks, and I even ate a few of them. I had found a cookbook on the shelf and had the ingredients for most of the dishes, so I figured why not give it a try. After that, I built a bunch of the crafts on the craft aisle, inflated some of the inflatable pool toys, and had a tea party with them. And really just kind of had fun. This was honestly a time of relaxation for me more than anything. I had worked myself to the bone for years, and the ability to just kind of exist was nice for a change. I had been sent home for about 2 months with pay during COVID, and the longer I stayed here, the more I realized I missed it. I missed getting paid to exist, doing things I liked, and just having fun. It wasn't actual fun though, I guess. It was more like when you're a kid at daycare and waiting for your mom to pick you up while you play with their toys. It all came to a head on the 6th day. I woke up, excited to find something else to do, but the longer I looked, the less I found to do. I put on some clothes from the clothing section, but I couldn't find anything that was my size. I found some pants that were too big and a shirt that was too small, and threw them both on the floor as I just decided to keep my old clothes from yesterday. I went to the toy aisle, but nothing caught my eye, and after stepping on a Lego truck with my bare foot, I went to find some shoes. I then went to make some breakfast, but I was kind of over it. I settled for grilled cheese before going to find something to occupy myself. Most of the crafts were built. Most of the books were colored or read, and I was struggling to find something to keep my mind occupied. I found one of those old plug-in games, the kind you plug into a TV and play games on. But I couldn't find a TV to attach the cords to. I went to bed that night feeling frustrated and realized some of the magic was gone from my sanctuary-turned-prison cell. Then on day 7 okay, this sounds a little childish, but I got fed up and went around wrecking things. It started with something small. I woke up with a pain in my neck, surrounded by inflatable toys, and went to go get a coffee drink. I stank. I could smell myself after not having showered in 5 days, and decided I might try to set up a camp shower. I was still hoping to wake up and discover that this was some kind of dream I was having, but the longer it went on, the less sure I was. So I went to get the coffee drink, a Starbucks mocha frap, from the cooler, but they were out. I didn't remember drinking the last one, but I guess I must have. There was a whole row of French vanilla beside it, but suddenly that made me even angrier. I didn't want French vanilla. I didn't want microwave toasters cooked in the microwave I'd found in the break room. And I didn't want to be stuck in a Dollar General with no one to talk to anymore. I took one of the French vanilla drinks, stepped back, and hurled it through the glass front of the refrigerator. It shattered, spilling glass and coffee all over the floor, and made another discovery right then. Number 3. That felt really good. I did again, and again, and again when I ran out of glass. I threw a few at the front door, but it didn't break. After that, I went on a rampage through the aisles. I smashed all my crafts, threw all my Legos, popped my inflatable friends with scissors or knives or just by jumping on them, tossed soda bottles, watched the tops burst as they went flying, and basically had a tantrum that would befit any child under 6. When I was done, I lay in the wreckage, making snow angels in a pile of chips I had poured out, and as I panted heavily, I felt a little better. I had pushed over a few of the shelves as well, and between 2 of them, the slant they made seeming to form an arrow, I saw something else I had done. In my chaos, something had hit one of the ceiling tiles, and now all that blackness could be seen. I started to worry about that, but it was burnt away in the face of my newfound adrenaline. I climbed onto the 2 shelves, shifting a little as they groaned mutinously, and looked into that void. It was still just hanging up there, motionless overhead, and I grabbed something from the top of the fallen shelf and tossed it towards the space. I didn't write down what it was, but I guess it doesn't matter because it never came out of that space again. I grabbed something else, had reared back to fling again, but I stopped halfway through my throw. Something about that darkness made me very uneasy. The way it moved after I had tossed something into it made it seem angry. I know how that sounds. How can darkness seem angry? But it did. It seemed to watch me as I prepared to throw, daring me to let it fly and see what happened. I let whatever it was fall to the ground and went down to get ready for bed. I was tired, exhausted from my day of destroying my prison, and I decided to drag my bedding under the shelves I had dropped together. 1. It made it feel like I had shelter. And 2, it was the cleanest part of the floor with the least crap on it. 3. I guess. was that if it all collapsed on top of me, at least I wouldn't be stuck here. I had scratched that last part out of my journal, but I think it's important to have it now. It speaks a lot to my state of mind. I must have dozed off for a little bit because when I came awake I was surprised to see that something had changed. The store was completely dark. The store lights had never gone off in the week that I had been here, not unless they went off after I went to sleep, and the new dark was highly unsettling. I wondered if that was what had woken me up, but as the shelves groaned again, I realized it had been something else. Whatever that something else was, it was now perched on top of my makeshift structure. For the first time in a week, I had something else here with me, and the knowledge made my blood run cold. I was under a big pile of blankets and inflatables that I had dragged here, and I snuggled down beneath them like a kid when he thinks there's a monster in his closet. I heard it moving around, heard it making its careful way off the shelves and across the mess I had created. The way it moved made me believe it was huge and hunkered to fit in the space, but I refused to peek and see what it was. It made noises of discomfort more than once, clearly coming down on some of the sharper bits of my mess, and I closed my eyes and tried to stay as quiet as I could. I wasn't sure if it was dangerous, and I didn't know if it would hurt me, but I knew enough to know that I didn't want to find out. It moved about for some indeterminable amount of time. Could be an hour as much as it could be 5 minutes, but eventually, it left and I could see the lights blink back to life as they came on again. Whatever it had been, it had killed the lights, and I made a note to watch out for that in the future. Eventually, I gave up on sleep and got up to see what was still eatable in the destroyed ruins of my cell. After finding some unopened chips, a mostly intact pizza, and some soda that I hadn't wrecked, I sat down to eat breakfast and write this. I decided to transcribe the journal into my phone, just in case something happens to it. And I've also decided to go into the bathroom again. It brought me here the first time. Maybe it can take me back again. Even if it doesn't, maybe it will take me somewhere else. I've ruined all my food here during my tantrum, and if it brings me right back here, then I guess I'll have to salvage what's left and try to live as long as I can. Looking through the door now, the Jeb on the other side looks very different than the one I'm in. It looks like this one when I first came through, and I'm hoping that if it doesn't take me back where I came from then, maybe it will take me somewhere that less wrecked. Wish me luck. Either way, that's all for now. Hopefully, there will be a chance for more some other time. Hey there everyone, it's me again. It's been about, I don't know how long since my last update, and I've made some new discoveries since. So, when I went through the door, I had a backpack, my journal, and a charger with a butt. I was wearing a fresh pair of basketball shorts, some flip-flops, and a shirt for some sports team or another. I had also stuck a few undestroyed bits of food in the backpack, and as I passed within the room I closed my eyes and prayed I would come out in my world. No such luck. But I did step out into a brand new Dollar General beyond. The shelves were upright. The floor may not have gleamed, but it was clean, and the shelves and coolers were stocked for another day of business. Stranger still was the change that came over me. When I walked through I had been holding the straps of my backpack, praying under my breath for escape. But as I walked in my hands suddenly grabbed nothing, and I felt jeans on my legs and boots on my feet again. I looked down to find my work shirt, the logo for Rocco Subs across the front, and took inventory of myself before going on. Discovery 4, you can't take things with you from other Dollar Generals. Only the things I brought into the Dollar General Beyond stayed with me when I traveled. Traveling is what I have called it when I go into the bathroom and step into a new Dollar General Beyond. My phone, my wallet, my work ID, the 27 cents I had from something earlier that day, and the granola I had crumpled up in my back pocket travel with me. Anything I try to bring through from other DGBs does not come with me. It's not a big problem. I can get more chargers or supplies when I get there. But it's a little jarring to feel the backpack disappear off your back. As such, I have started keeping my journal here on my phone since the words and notes seem to come along with me too. This brings us to the next thing. Discovery 5, the stores reset themselves when you travel. The Jag I walked into looked similar to the one I had left, and the stock was back and in place. I say similar because the inflatables are gone in favor of autumn items. There's decorative pumpkins on the seasonal shelves. There are fall items throughout the store, and many of the coffee drinks now have pumpkin spice in their midst. Everything else is the same. But it's like the store goes through little changes when you go to a new one. I still couldn't leave. The doors refused to open. But the lights are on and the music is still playing, so that's not too bad. Plus, I like pumpkin spice, so that's not a big problem. This time around I started experimenting a bit with the door. I now realized that the sign I had made on the first night hadn't just gone away. When I passed back through the bathroom door, I had gone into a new dab and the sign hadn't existed there yet. I didn't bother to put one up this time, not really wanting to attract the attention of whatever might be out there anyway. I took note of my food, deciding how much I'd have before I had to move again, and figured I had about 2 months of food on hand as long as I didn't go buck wild. I found some bedding and made myself a little bed area, and then I set to experimenting. I started by throwing things through the door. It started with action figures. I probably tossed about 24 army men through the door before realizing I had no way to see if I could get them back. So I went to the dental aisle and got some floss. And that's when I discovered I didn't have to get them back. There was a small pile of loose army men laying on the floor of the toy aisle, just hanging out as if they had tumbled there from nowhere. The other store had rejected them, sending them back to their point of origin. And I looked at the dental floss dubiously. I shrugged. It was for science. After all, I hooked it to the little base of the soldier and tossed it in. The army man disappeared into the space, and the dental floss kept spooling out as the greedy doorway to the whole box of minty rope. It came out quickly. Running out fast enough to make me think I might see smoke. And when the spool jerked as it hit the end, the little box fell out of my hand. It slid across the ground and went in too. I watched the door for a few seconds before going to see if both had gone back to their point of origin. Sure enough, the army man was in the toy aisle and the floss was in a pile on the dental aisle with the box beneath it. I picked up the dental floss and went to look for other things to throw through the doorway. I didn't really have anything living. Besides me, and I knew I could go through the portal. I settled for some bananas, but they too came back. Same with other fruits, but I had figured they would. Liquids were the same. The oil I splashed through the portal made a huge mess on the floor when it tried to go back, and I stopped after that. Nothing could go through the door other than me. Understood. That was day 8. On day 9, I looked at the data I had to see what it all meant. The only things I really knew about this place was that A, I couldn't leave. B, I could only go to copies of the same Dollar General. C, some of those copies were a little different but still similar. And D, only I could go between the places. And E, there was something else that could go between those places. It wasn't a lot to go by, but it was something. This place had rules, and rules were something I could work with. I spent a few days in that particular store, grabbing things at random and throwing them in to make sure the rules were constant. In the end, everything came back. Nothing was immune to the rules except for me. I looked for living things to throw in, but it appeared I was the only thing that lived here, which was concerning. Most stores try to keep themselves clean, but inevitably there will be bugs or even rats in a store. I checked under every shelf, in every corner, and behind every box and bag, but I couldn't find any of the usual signs of pests. No mouse crap, no spider webs, no roach bodies, no nothing. Maybe that was part of it too. I didn't know, but I made a note of it. Discover 6, there are no pests in the Dollar General beyond. After that, I decided I had done all I could do here. What else was I going to do in this store? What was I going to do in any other store? For that matter, I didn't know, but I realized that staying wasn't going to get me anywhere. I started to pack a few things but realized the futility. It would all just disappear when I went, but I did do something before moving on. I went and grabbed a permanent marker from the stationery section and drew a big letter B on the floor by the front door. I didn't know if it did, but if I ever rolled back through a store I had already been to, I wanted to be able to tell. That done, I stepped through the bathroom and into another Dollar General. It wasn't mine either, though. The store looked the same, but all the products were in a foreign language. I had taken Spanish in high school, but whatever the language was, it wasn't that. I thought it might be one of the Middle Eastern languages. I'd played enough Call of Duty and seen enough street graffiti to find it familiar but still unknown. Some of the food was different too. There were more regional cuisines, flatbreads, and strange meats, and the music playing overhead was something best described as pop with yelling. The automatic doors had also been replaced with a roll-down grate, and the grate was secured as if for the night. I ate a little of the food, the stuff that I didn't need to cook, and drew a big C on the floor near the doors before moving on again. I did this for a while, not really sure how long I was traveling, but leaving my signs behind. Some of the stores were set for different holidays. Some of them were in different languages. A couple of them had weird alien goods that I had no idea what were, and I moved on from these quickly. Some looked to be selling human meat and pieces of people. In some there was music. In some there was silence. In one the lights were black lights. In another, the floor was lit up and the ceiling was not. Some of the music was just static. In the store that sold human meat, the music was just the same screaming again and again. In all of them, I left a letter. In all of them, I hoped to find my way home and didn't. This was exciting at first. I was exploring unfound territory and seeing things that no one had ever seen before. I was a pioneer, a traveler, and I found myself filled with wonder as I hoped this trip would be my last. The different stores were cool, and I was never scared of what I saw. The rule had always been that I was the only living thing here. The rule had always been that there was nothing in any of these places that would hurt me. I had put the creature out of my mind, thought perhaps I had dreamed it, and as time went by, I couldn't tell you how long I spent just going from one to the next to the next. In some I spent days, in others I spent minutes. When I was tired, I slept. When I was hungry, I ate. When I had to go, I went. It wasn't until I drew a Z on the ground of a particular Dollar General, one with a strange mixture of French and Spanish products that all seemed to be made of lamb meat, that I realized how long I had been doing this. This was the 26th one I had been to. I had been going straight through many of them, and I had yet to see anything beyond the front door other than the murk of night of darkness or whatever. I hadn't found anyone else either, and that was beginning to worry me. I also hadn't run back over any of my letters, which was less worrisome, since it meant that there might not be an end to these stores. I found I'd been looking at the Z on the floor for several minutes before shaking it off and heading back for the bathroom. Nothing to do now but carry on. It would be another 7 stores before my ideas of being alone were challenged. The letters had replaced my days by then. I could have no more told you how long I had been here than I could have told you who the King of Spain was. I had begun leaving double letters after the Z, and I figured that at some point I would have to leave triple and quadruple. I tried to sleep as little as possible, keeping moving until I had to stop. And I was yawning as I went into a store I was already thinking of as FF. I walked into a familiar scene, though I knew it wasn't the place I'd thought it was. The store was wrecked, and it was the first one I had seen out of order since the store I had trashed. I wondered if I had come back full circle, but one look at the shelves was enough to tell me I hadn't done this. All the food was labeled in a strange language that I had no clue how to read, and the doors looked like an elevator, the metal doors firmly closed. As I moved about the store, I felt like something was watching me, and I found myself turning quickly as I tried to catch sight of it. It was the first movement I had seen outside my own as I walked past a mirror. It made me paranoid to feel something watching me, and I made a meandering path towards automotive so I could find something to swing if it came after me. The lights in the back hung down by broken chains, and as they flickered I saw what I was after. The 4-way lug wasn't a perfect weapon, but as the careful, furtive movement I'd been seeing suddenly turned into a wild and stunted charge. I gripped it tightly. I turned suddenly, smashing it into whatever was coming for me. But as I lifted it to swing again, I felt my fingers grow weak. It was a person. It was a person. It was a human. At least I thought it was. He was an old man, shirtless and hunched, and his skin looked tight as it clung to his ribs. He has clearly not been eating enough, and he lifted his stick-thin arms as he tried to defend himself from me. However long he had been here, he had lost the ability to speak in something recognizable. He sputtered and chirped, making something like animal noises as he held his bleeding head and moaned in pain. I didn't wait for him to get his wits about him. I dropped the wrench and took off, sprinting for the bathroom as I leaped through the door and into a new Dollar General beyond. This one had flowers, and Mother's Day decorations festooned every end cap. But all I could do was lay there and pull my knees to my chest. I had seen another person. I had attacked the only other person I had found. Well, technically he had tried to attack me first, but I was still coming to terms with what had happened as I tried to get myself together. The food here was normal, and as I ate, I pinned this addition to my journal. The notes here are all I have to prove I'm not going crazy. It seems there are others here, though they don't seem very friendly. I've already marked the store as GG and I'm preparing to take a rest for a little while before proceeding on. I don't know what else I'll find out there, but I still remain hopeful that it will be a way out. I'll keep you posted. Pray for me. I still hope to come out of this alive. I know it's been a little bit, or maybe it hasn't, but I hope you guys haven't worried about me too much. It's been a really productive few days lately. I met someone and he really helped me figure this out. He also helped me learn a few things that I wasn't aware of. Some things that scared the hell out of me. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let me tell you what's happened since I last posted. I spent several days in GG, the store with the Mother's Day decorations, just getting my head together. You may have a hard time believing this, but I don't often have to attack people in my day-to-day life. Every now and again you may have to bump chests with a rowdy customer at the sub shop, but I hadn't actually had to fight another human being since high school. The thought that I might have killed the guy was repugnant to me, and I was afraid to move on to the next one. What if I found another person like that? What if I found a whole tribe of them? The person who had slept below the shelves and prayed they would crush him seemed like worlds away from me. And I found that maybe I did want to keep living. After a few days of eating and feeling sorry for myself, I collected up the things that would come with me and stepped through the bathroom door again. I went back to my usual routine, but finding another person made me think. Was I the only one leaving markings? Was I the only one marking the stores in case I needed to find my way back? I looked around, but I never found anything beyond the usual graffiti or vandalism. Rude words scrawled on the door by the bathroom, sometimes in English, and sometimes not. I also found hearts with initials, catchphrases, and the usual things that children do. It meant nothing until I saw something different in KK. I had been traveling slower, really looking for the signs of other people, and that's when I found the bulletin board. I knew something was different when I walked into KK. The shelves weren't full like the others had been. They weren't empty. Not really. But they were sparse and looked picked over. Things were out of place too. This store had furniture, and some of it had been arranged in a way that made me think people had been sleeping close for comfort. The ceiling tiles were hanging down too, something I didn't like, and the music was nothing but harsh static. Also, there was a sign written on poster board in the front window. I blinked at it when I noticed it, thinking it might be mine. Someone had scrolled a similar message on the other side, but this side would only be seen by people already in the store. The writing was messy, scribbled with a magic marker, but it was readable, and it filled me with hope that the crazy hermit might not be the norm. If you can read this, check the bulletin boards in the break room. When I come back here, I'll answer your message. It was like a bomb going off in my head, and I kicked myself for not looking. How many break rooms had I been in? How many times had I used the microwave or opened the fridge to see what was inside? I had passed by the corkboard 1,000 times, but never once had I thought to read it. It would be things I had no interest in, things for employees, but it seemed now that might not be the case. I hurried behind the counter and went to check the board, finding a treasure trove of knowledge. Their name was Gale, and they had pinned a good many things there. Rules of the DG: don't go outside. There's nothing out there. The food runs out. So don't hog it all. The food doesn't go bad, so don't worry about that. Whatever you do here, stays here. Don't go into the ceiling. No one comes back from the ceiling. Don't be afraid to leave. There's nothing for you here once it's gone. Another piece of paper had a picture of a big dark creature that had been colored in with a crayon. The miasma. Don't let it see you or you'll die. Don't go into the ceiling or it will get you. The last one seemed to be a goodbye letter, and it was in the same handwriting as the others. I feel bad that I couldn't bury you properly, so let this serve as your memorial. Here lies Kenneth, Margot, Rudy, and Celine. They were the best crew anyone could ask for, and I miss them every day. Kenneth, who was never late for work and always so full of adventure, lost when he went outside. Margot, so full of life and hope, lost to the thing that lives in the ceiling. Rudy, my son, who wanted more than his old man could give him, lost in the ceiling when he went to go get Margot. Celine, who always made sure we ate before she would, went through the door when I was too cowardly and hard-headed. Let this stand as their gravestones. Let this tell their tale. I hope to find Celine when I go through that door. I'm still scared. I'm still hard-headed. But the food won't last forever. And I have to do something. If Rudy is out there somewhere, then I'd rather die trying to find him than starving to death in this place. To whoever reads this, don't be afraid to go through the door, and I hope to see you on the other side. Gail Thornton. Assistant Manager of Dollar General Beyond Story 4891. I didn't know whether I should leave anything or not. This looked like a memorial more than a notice board. But if Gail came back here, I wanted him to know that someone else was out there. Paper was easy to come by. Ditta pens, and I scribbled a hasty introduction before pressing it to the surface with a push pin. It looked lame beside Gail's words, but it was the best I had. I ate a little of what was left, leaving my mark before moving on. When I traveled now, besides leaving my mark, I always checked the bulletin boards. Sometimes there were messages from Gail, but mostly there weren't. Sometimes there were other messages though. Usually, it was people looking for people or people looking for people who were lost. Some of the bulletin boards looked like the missing walls at rest stops. And two that I saw a lot were someone looking for a boy named Jacob and someone looking for a dog named Buddy. Looking for my grandson Jacob. 5 years old. Blue shirt. Blue jean shorts. Skechers light-up shoes. If you see him, keep him safe. He liked mac and cheese. Disappeared when he went to the bathroom on accident. Border collie named Buddy. Black and white with some brown. Blue bandana around neck. Very sweet. Good service dog. Would love to see him again. The former made my blood run cold, and the more I tried to put it out of my mind, the more it stuck. Jacob. The name the old man had screamed as he lay bleeding. Was he Jacob? Was he the one looking for Jacob? I didn't know. But it didn't matter either. I couldn't get back to him, and I had no clue where his grandson was regardless. I would leave notes of my own, letting them know that I was leaving the letters if they came across them, and telling them a little about the places I could remember. It was like having pen pals, except you were never sure whether they were getting your letters and you had no way to get letters back from them. In that respect, I guess it was more like sending messages in a bottle. It went on like that for a little. But when I came to BBB, I found out that someone had seen one of my messages and left a response. Dear Alphabet Man, very clever. I like your ingenuity. I'm glad you found the bulletin boards and have figured this place out a little. Hopefully, we can find each other someday. It would be nice to see a friendly face. Gail. Heart. I was thrilled. Finally, someone was responding back to me. I had felt guilty about not trying to communicate with the old man, but this made me feel a little better. If we could get together, we could share knowledge. If we could meet, then maybe we could figure this out. I kept going, each new store hoping to find Gail. But each new store seemed to find me a couple of steps behind. He was leaving messages, leaving answers to old messages sometimes, but I never seemed to catch him. Gail and I were moving through this space differently, it seemed, and Gail was better at it than I was. Gail, I came to believe, could move backward as well as forwards. 2 Alphabet Men saw your mark, the one labeled K. Be careful if you find yourself there again. Sometimes there are shadows there that like people a little too much. Gail, 2 Alphabet Man, I thought I had gone to the hermit store for a minute, but I see this may be where you began your journey. Try not to destroy any more of them. They aren't as infinite as you may believe. Gail, 2 Alphabet Men found your stovetop in the place you call SS. Hope the eggs were good. And thanks for leaving me some. Gail, this went on for 3 or 4 more trips before I found the message I was looking for. Jage, the spot I had found myself in, looked very different from the other stores I'd been to. It looked picked clean, every shelf emptied and bare. Someone had collected a pile of things from the store and attempted to burn the door. It smelled like they had used lighter fluid to start, and the ceiling tiles by the door had fallen as they charred and left a wide gaping maw above the door. But, however, was none the worse for wear. I skirted the edge of the ceiling hole and made my way toward the break room. I didn't expect to find anything. but I was surprised to find the break room still intact. On the board was a message written on the back of a charred newspaper. Alphabet Man, I hate to leave you in a place like this. But if you keep to your current path, you should be here in a couple of days. Stay here for 2 sleeps. There is food in the back as well as water. And if I haven't made it by then, it means something has happened, and you should move on. With any luck, we'll meet up in 2 days' time. Looking forward to seeing you. Gail. I read the message a few times. Not sure if I wanted to stay here or not. This place was creepy, to be sure. But the chance to meet Gail was something I couldn't pass up. I checked on the food he had mentioned and found several days' worth of water and non-perishable foods that someone had stuck in the back. There was no sign of whoever had set the fire, and I hoped that I had the place to myself. I dragged some bedding and food to the break room, feeling that I'd rather hide in there than in the open, and settled in for the next couple of days. I kept the door to the break room closed, and if anything moved out there, I didn't hear it the first night. I mostly rested the next day, glad for the opportunity to do so. I had been going strong for a long time, resting when I was ready to fall down, and it was nice to get a little downtime. I wished it was somewhere a little nicer, but even this place told me things I didn't know. The doors, it seemed, were very resilient, but that made me wonder about Gail's story. He said that Kenneth had made it out those doors, and I wondered how such a thing was possible. The doors seemed unmovable, and the longer I thought about it, the more I couldn't wait to hear his story when he got here. As I settled in for the second night, though, I heard something groan from the main floor and huddled deeper under my blankets. It was the exact same sound I had heard as I lay under the shelves, and as I listened to it move through the bones of the store, I realized I had trapped myself in my pursuit of safety. If it came in here after me, I'd have no way to escape. But if I could make it to the bathroom, I could escape and touch base with Gail some other time. He would understand, especially if this was miasma, and I pushed the blankets away as I crept towards the door. I could hear it moving on the other end of the store, and as I opened the door, I prayed it wouldn't squeak. If it made a noise, it was unnoticed by the creature, and I prepared to make a break for it. Looking around the doorframe, I felt my ambition drain away as I caught sight of the creature in new terror. It was huge. Its shadowy form stooped over, and it looked like nothing I had ever seen. It was darkness, a living fog bank of midnight, and as my teeth threatened to clack, glanced at the bathroom and tried to steel myself for my run. That's when I saw something that pushed my apprehension away, and I was filled with renewed drive. Over by the bathroom, peeking around the side of the alcove, was a person in a red vest with a salt and pepper crew cut. He saw me too, and as he nodded his head, telling me to come there. He tossed something towards the back of the store. The bottle burst with a loud pop and the creature growled like a mudslide. It lunged towards the back, slamming into the back wall, and I took my chance and ran. It heard me then, turning its ponderous form as it tried to give chase, but I was out of its reach. Gail grabbed my wrist, and as we lunged through the bathroom door, the thing was mere inches behind us. As we lay outside the bathroom, the new Dollar General a pleasant sight after the burnt-out husk we'd come from. The man smiled at me and offered me a hand. It's nice to meet you properly, Alphabet Man. I'm Gail, but I suspect you already figured that out. I know. It's been longer than you likely wanted to wait to hear more. I've been in a place the last few days that I've been calling Jab Zero. It's a place I've never been but seems to be where Gail has been staying. There isn't any real difference between DG Zero and any other store. But Gail has been living there for, well, a long time and says it's his kind of base of operations. What's more, Gail can bring things between stores. When I asked him how, he said it was a trick he had learned, and that he might teach me if we had time. I laughed. Time was something we seemed to have a lot of. I honestly couldn't tell you how long I've been here. It never gets light out. There are no clocks inside the store. My phone time changes, but sometimes the dates and years jump ahead by years or back by centuries. Right now it says it's 3278 on Friday in September in 1632. I haven't received any replies to any of my messages or posts, but I honestly haven't checked much. I don't even really know if you guys are getting these anymore. I haven't seen a reply since the first installment, so if I haven't been responding, don't take it personal. I've certainly been a little busy. After all, Before we go on, some differences between Zero and the other stores. But on to what you're dying to know. Gale is a middle-aged guy, probably about 40 or 45. He's still wearing his Dollar General uniform, complete with name badge. And he says that no matter what happens, it always comes back. The only thing that seems to stay with him are the bags under his eyes, and the guy looks tired. He made us dinner, soup and sandwiches, and toasted me with a pop from a brand I wasn't familiar with but turned out to be ginger ale, after eating a couple of bowls of stew and about 3 sandwiches. I hadn't eaten much of substances in a few days. We started talking. I told him about my life as a wage slave, and he commiserated. I know what that's like. I had actually just been transferred to this store when I got stuck here. How long ago was that? Oh, I asked, sitting back in the wicker chair he had brought from somewhere else and listening to it creak comfortably. Who knows? Gale said. When I left the world as I knew it, it was 1998. And I had just been sent to South Dakota to manage a new store. It's more pay and you can pick your own crew, my boss had said, and I was glad of more money. My ex-wife had just petitioned for more child support, the 3rd time in as many years, and I was just trying to keep fed in a bed with my head above water, he said, laughing as he took a sip of the green can that called itself CO Firm. So I left Scottsdale, where I had been managing one of the few remaining J. L. Turner and Sons. And after looking through some applications, I decided that I liked the look of Kenneth, Celine, and Margot. Oh yeah. Wait. I remember there was another name on your memorial. When did Rudy come along? Gale looked away then, and I tried not to notice as he teared up a little. Oh yeah. How could I forget Rudy? I had been working at the store for a few months when he called me. Rudy was a lot older than his sister, from my first marriage when I was barely more than a kid myself. And he had been managing his own store in Texas. The store, however, had burned down suddenly one night, and he was wondering if my store had a position. I know you're the manager, Dad, but I'll do stock work if I need to. The noise around here makes me think that the locals don't like me any more than they like the store, and my apartment might go up in smoke next if I stay. Dollar General had run a few of the mom and pop stores in town out of business, you see, and the locals blamed Rudy and DG for that. I called corporate, asked if I could get funding for one more worker, and Rudy came to make it 5. We were tight-knit, working long hours and trying to compete in the local market. The mom and pops in Chamberlain were dead set against losing business to us, but we held our own and carved out a niche for ourselves. We didn't run the town, but we did okay. Then, one night we got robbed. Margot and I were manning the front, Kenneth was in the back, and Celine was staying over to look over the books. She had been an accountant before taking a job that was a little more flexible, and I had promised her some overtime if she would help me balance the receipts before our yearly audit next week. I wasn't even supposed to be there, but I was helping Margot through a busy time before the guy came in. We were getting ready to clean up after closing time so we could pass the audit, and Rudy was coming in around 8 to help. We'd all clean for a while, and then maintain through Sunday so we could be ready and fresh on Monday. We were just getting ready to close the doors at 8 when he barges in and pulls a gun. The guy had to be looking for drug money. He was out of his mind on something, and he rounded all of us up and put us behind the counter. He emptied the register, tried to get the safe, but it was on a timer that wouldn't even open until after 10, and made us empty our pockets and hand over our wallets. I was just thanking the universe that Rudy hadn't showed up when he popped up with a pizza after coming through the employee door around back. Thus, he joined the hostage situation. We all started out behind the counter, but the robber thought that there might be a silent alarm back there. So he moved all of us to break room, but thought we might gang up on us there. There was no door on the break room, so he finally decided to put us all in the bathroom and keep us penned up in there while he left. He herded us all through the door, and imagine our surprise when we came out in a different Dollar General. It was just like ours, except the doors wouldn't open. We didn't think about trying to go back through the bathroom. And good thing too. These Dollar Generals don't seem to look back on themselves. The bathroom only takes you to a different one. Never back the way you came. But you go back to different ones. I put in. He smiled. In due time, my friend. You probably remember the first Dollar General you stayed in for a while. I imagine it got a little boring after a while, didn't it? I nodded, telling him it had only taken me about a week to be done with it. Well, a month. Imagine that times 5. At first it had a lot of fun. We played games, spent time together, and kind of felt like a real family. Rhodey and Margot had been having a not-so-secret relationship for months, and Kenneth and Margot and I hung out a lot outside of work. We cooked dinners. We made crafts. We built puzzles. And for a little while it was great. After a couple of weeks, though, we all started going a little cabin crazy. The sun never rose. The lights never went out. And the doors never opened. We didn't know how we were being kept here, but some of them started trying to find out. He took another sip of the ginger ale, as if wetting his throat for a long story, and pressed on. It started with Kenneth. Kenneth was an avid hiker and liked to explore. He wanted to see if the space outside the DG was the same as ours. But he couldn't get the doors open. He pushed and pulled, tried to break the glass, tried to wedge the doors open, but it was no use. He tried for 3 days to get outside, and on the 4th day something happened. Something that showed the rest of us that we might not have been as alone as we thought. The doors opened. Kenneth had been shoving at it for most of the day, trying to get the front door open and failing miserably. He finally threw it down, like a child having a tantrum, and kicked it half-heartedly with his foot. Then, to his astonishment, it opened as smoothly as it ever had. Outside was nothing but smooth darkness, like the waters of a deep lake by night. And when he took his first step, I told him not to. I felt like something out there was wrong, some place we weren't meant to go to. But he was powerless to stop himself. He stepped out into that darkness, and as he passed between the doors, they slammed shut behind him. I've never seen them open like that again, and they never opened for him to come back in again. He glanced at the doors to the Dollar General he had chosen to take up residence in, and when I glanced at it, I noticed someone had piled things in front of it. Card racks and newspaper racks and other things blocked it, as if it might open and tempt him out again. Some of them weren't in English. Some of them had odd dimensions to them, and it was clear he had ranged wide to find some of these things. Then Margot got snatched by whatever lurks in the ceiling. I call it the miasma, the thing that came after you in the burnt-out store. Had you seen it before then? Once. I admitted. Bet it was right after you started messing with the ceiling. Wasn't it? I nodded guiltily. Rudy and Margot had been looking for a way out as well. They decided that they could get out through the roof. But when they took some of the tiles down, they discovered a deep bank of darkness up there. It was just like the stuff outside the door, and when Rudy reached out to touch it, I told him not to. Rudy was a good kid, and he knew better than to touch something I was that worried about. The two of them were young, though, and when they called me over to see something, I watched as he tossed a tennis ball into the void. They had about 4 empty cans of tennis balls on the floor, and when I asked if they had all gone in, Rudy said they had. When I asked how many had come out, he told me none. I didn't think anything of it. And when he threw the cans up there, none of them came down either. I was settling and getting ready for bed. Celine already snoozing on the little sectional pieces we had all pushed in close together, when the light went out. This was alarming because the lights had never gone out before. The light stayed on all the time, which was why it was so hard to tell what time of day it was, or how long you have actually been here. There was a weird growling noise and I heard someone scream from out in the darkness. Something fell over then and I grabbed Tilene as the two of us burrowed under our pile of blankets. I was worried for Rudy and Margot, but at that point in time I was more concerned with surviving until the lights came back on. Something stumped close to Hughes, making a lot of racket as it pushed things around. But after a while the lights came on again, and we surfaced to find some shelves shoved over, and a lot of things crushed and smashed. Rudy found us not long after that, saying that he and Margot had seen a monster come out of the ceiling. It had grabbed her as he ran for the manager's office, and when the lights came back on, he had found the same mess we had. When I asked him what it looked like, he said it was hard to tell with the lights off. He drew that picture you saw in the break room, and for a while that was the best description we had of the miasma. Rudy was sullen for a few days, looking at the hole in the ceiling, but I told him to leave it be. It had clearly come out because we had messed with it, and if we left it alone, It would leave us alone. He wanted to go look for Margot. Said he thought if he went up there he might be able to find her. But I told him to forget about it. We had lost 2 people already, and the thought of losing my son was difficult to think about. About 3 days later, I woke up to find a letter saying he was going to find Margot, and a ladder set up directly under the ceiling. I climbed it, meaning to go in and get him back. But after standing on that top rung and looking into the murk for nearly an hour, I finally climbed down and put the ladder away. It was just Colleen and I. We sat in silence for a few minutes, lounging on the padded sectional pieces that I now questioned whether or not had once been their sleeping arrangement. "I'm tired," he said, his voice hollow as he lay back. "Let's continue this after some shut-eye." He rolled away from me, facing the chocolate upholstery, but I doubted he slept. At some point I dozed off after trying to ignore his quiet sobbing, and woke up to find coffee, eggs, bacon, and toast. Figured you might want a nice hot breakfast after what we went through yesterday with that thing. Don't worry, it's all scavenged from stores like ours. None of it's human meat or weird animal parts or anything. I hadn't thought of that, but it was certainly an interesting concept. As we ate, he finished. Celine went last, and she may not even be dead. I was distraught after Rudy, just sitting there and feeling sorry for myself. But Celine had been experimenting with the door we had come through. She told me how she opened it to find yet another Dollar General beyond that, and when she threw things into it, they came back. I just sat, not taking in any of it. And then one day she came up to me and said she was leaving. I looked up to find she was wearing a backpack and had put on a floppy gardening hat. "Going?" I asked, not understanding. "Going where?" "We can't go anywhere. We're stuck here. The food is beginning to dwindle, even with just the 2 of us eating. It won't last much longer, and I don't intend to starve here. If that doorway took us here, then it can take us out again maybe. Come with me, even if we go somewhere else. It's got to be better than here. There might be food, or maybe Rudy and Margot are there. Maybe Kenneth is somewhere different too. Either way, if we stay here, we're going to die. Come with me. We can start over somewhere else." I wanted to. I really did. But at that point I was at my lowest. My family had abandoned me. My son had left too. And now the last of my friends was deserting me. I turned away, saying nothing. And when she left, I just sat there. She never came. At least not as far as I know. And I've never seen her in any of the stores I've traveled to. I sat there for a long time, just stewing. But eventually I was down to canned goods and the big jugs of water. When the water ran out, I drank from the fountain. When the canned good ran out, however, I started looking at the door too. There was food on the other side of that door. I could see it. And without thinking about it, I stepped through. I was in a brand new Dollar General, fully stocked with food and set up for Christmas, and that was how it all started. I never stayed long in any store then. I just kept moving, hoping I would find Celine or Ruddy or anyone. I found a few people, but the ones I found were usually scared or half crazy, and I moved on quickly. One fella, an older guy in a half-destroyed store, stabbed me with pruning shears as I went through his place. I gasped, but when he pulled up his shirt and pointed at a spot about midway up his belly, I didn't see anything. Not a scar, not a red mark, nothing. It looked as fresh as new skin, and he laughed when I looked surprised. Luckily for me, I was close enough to the door to make it through, and that's when I made my biggest discovery. I fell through the door, grabbing at the shears so I didn't push them in deeper, and found they were gone. So was the wound. You've probably noticed that no matter how ragged your clothes get, that they always repair themselves when you pass through the door, right? Well, it's the same with your body. Burns, cuts, stabs. They all heal when you go to a new store. I've had all manner of things wrong with me, but a new store always means a new me. We sat there for a few minutes, each of us digesting something different, it seemed. "Did you ever find Rhodey or Margot or Kenneth?" I finally asked, already guessing the answer. It was several minutes before he responded, and I wasn't sure he would for a minute. "No," he finally said. They went beyond the Dollar General beyond. The store protects us, insulates us to a certain degree, but if we go beyond, and then we are lost. I've watched the store change over the years. New items added, new layouts and concepts, but I've stayed the same. I was 43 in '98, and I still look exactly the same as I did then. I haven't aged, and neither will you. The store traps us, keeps us like this, and plays with us until it inevitably breaks us. And there's nothing we can do about it. He looked sad, but when he turned back, his smile had returned. But, Harrison, he said, there are things we can do to make it harder for them to break us. Things I can show you. Gail's promised to teach me what he knows, and I'm eager to learn. I think I've shared enough for now. Gail's asleep and I can tell that the tapping from my phone is bothering him. I'll update you guys again a little later. Until then, don't get stuck in the Dollar General beyond either. Or we might have to come find you as well. Till next time. Gail has taken me under his wing and is showing me his secrets to surviving in here. He's a good teacher, and I'm learning some tricks for navigating the DGBs. It's hard to explain it all, but I'm going to try my best. A lot of it is mental preparation and association, which is really hard to teach. But Gail is a pretty good teacher, and I'm starting to get the hang of it. The first lesson was how the DGBs work. All the Dollar Generals are like spokes on a bike tire. They all move forward, never backward. You can't go back simply by going through the door. Wherever you entered from is your first spoke on the wheel. That's why everyone's journey starts at a different part. My first spoke is different from yours, and my last spoke will be different from yours. There are a nearly infinite number of Dollar Generals. At least I've never seen one repeat itself by going through the door. I'm sure there must be an end to them, but I'm not sure I want to see what that looks like any more than you do. Are you with me so far? I nodded, but thinking about it made my head hurt a little. Traveling the spokes, the stores, is easy. You just go through the door. Navigating the stores is a little harder. The way I did it was to think of the stores as spokes on a wheel, but a wheel needs a hub. This store is my hub. It's the middle point where I come to get out of the wheel. Technically, it's a spoke too, but thinking of it as a hub helps ground yourself. You get it. I waffled a little, not wanting to admit that it was a little over my head. Kinda? So, Gail laughed. Don't worry. You'll pick it up. It's like riding a bike. Once you do it, it's easy. In that he wasn't wrong. Lesson number 2 was traveling with people. So, if you're traveling with other people, you have to be touching them for the two of you to travel together. Here, put a hand on my shoulder, he said as he prepared to step through the door. I slid a hand on his shoulder and we stepped through together into a familiar store. It was KK, the place I had found Gail's bulletin board. See, he said. That's how we came out in my Dollar General when we left the miasma behind. I had a hand on your back, so we came through together. That made sense. And we proceeded with lesson 3, traveling to specific places. You've done yourself a favor by leaving marks behind. At first I was popping around to stores I remembered, like the ones with weird letters or the ones with strange things in them. But once I started leaving my own markings, I could travel to specific places. Pick out one of the stores you've been to before, and let's go there. He put a hand on my shoulder this time, but when I walked through the door, we came out on LL instead of GG, the store with the Mother's Day decorations. I was a little disappointed, but Gail patted my shoulder reassuringly. It's tricky, he assured me. Took me a while to figure it out too. Let's try again. Picture the marks you left. Close your eyes and get a good mental picture, and then step through the door. I tried it again. And really focusing on the twin G's. But when I stepped through this time, it was to find myself in an older location with a single G on the floor. When I told him I'd goofed again, however, he told me it was progress. You're getting the hang of it. Going to G when thinking ugh GG is pretty damn close. Keep practicing. We spent a while just traveling from one store to the next. Sometimes it got close. Sometimes I just moved forward. But after a while I started to travel to the right destination sometimes. It was something that took a lot of focus. And when I put a hand to my head and told him I was getting a headache, Gail suggested we take a break, have a rest, drink some water or Gatorade or maybe some coffee and just kind of take it easy for a bit. It isn't something you can get right away. It takes practice. And even I sometimes get it wrong after all this time. I can't say how long we were at it, but for what must have been a few days we worked on pinpointing my navigation through the stores I had been to already. I saw a lot of familiar places, though Gail refused to go to the meat market store as he called it. He said he had encountered shadows there that thought he might be for sale and he had barely escaped with his life. I figured I must have gone while they were closed and counted myself lucky. After a while I could travel pretty well between stores without too much trouble. And when Gail was pretty confident that I had the process down, he suggested we move on to something else. Lesson 4 involved bringing other things with you to other stores. So your clothes travel with you because you don't think about them coming with you. It's like your nose or your hands. They're a part of you and your mind just assumes that they will. Now I want you to take a good look at yourself and visualize what you look like in your clothes. Once you have it committed to memory, then you can add things to it and take them with you. He had me practice in front of a full-length mirror, inspecting myself and committing my clothes to memory. The clothes weren't hard. I had worked at the same place for years and was very aware of what my uniform looked like. No, the hard part was adding to it. I found the most colorful backpack in the store, but committing it to memory was difficult. If it wasn't just right, then it wouldn't come with me. And Gail assured me that the backpack was all I needed to get right. Once you have the backpack down, everything you zip inside is inside. You don't really have to remember it because it's inside the bag and you know it's inside the bag. Once you have the bag down, the rest is cake. That one took a while and gave me many headaches. Sometimes the bag wouldn't come with me. Sometimes the bag would, but the things inside wouldn't. Sometimes the bag would, but I would concentrate so hard on the bag that I wouldn't travel where I wanted to go. Sometimes I would load it up with stuff and find the bag had stayed where I had been. Gail told me to be diligent, and after a while it came together. I couldn't say how long that was, but it had to be months. We went about my training the same way I had gone about traveling. When I was tired, I slept. When I was hungry, I ate. When I had to go, I went. Gail had an answer for the solid waste too, and it made me laugh when he explained it. The place with the burnt roof is where I take all my crap to. I figure if it's where that thing moves around the most, he is welcome to it. We went there when we had a bunch of it. Gail putting it in a hefty bag and sealing it in his backpack. He tossed it into the gaping ceiling and ran. The two of us coming back to dead zero like kids after a prank. Gail said he always waited till he had a whole bag to throw it out and he hoped the creep liked his little presents. Gail and I became good friends, but I think it was more than that for him. Sometimes when he clapped me on the shoulder, there was an almost parental gleam in his eye. We ate together. We slept near each other. We talked a lot, and we became close quickly. We talked about his travels, the things he had seen in the more than 20 years he had been moving through the Dollar Generals. But eventually we landed on a top I had been hoping he knew something about. How far in have you been? I asked one night as we were cooking marshmallows over a propane burner. Gail thought about it as he slid the mess between graham crackers and chocolate. I've marked up to 218, I think. Do you? I thought about my question a little more as I chewed over my own s'more. Do you think anyone have made it out? I said, slurring a little as the treat stuck to my mouth. I don't know, he said. If they did, I don't suppose we would know. Not unless they left notes. I nodded, taking a sip of lukewarm cocoa to clear the roof of my mouth. Surely the stores can't go on forever. There has to be an end. Gail shrugged. I suppose. It wouldn't make sense for them to go on that long. I almost hope there isn't, though. If there is an end, then there's only so much food, water, and supplies. We will eventually starve to death here, and that's a bleak prospect. We went to bed not long afterward, but I never stopped thinking about that infinite loop of perfectly odd Dollar General stores. What would be at the end? If there was one, would it be an exit? Would it be where the creature lived? Was the end what lay outside or in the ceiling? I had no answers, so I drifted off thinking about the possibilities as the fluorescent hummed overhead. Gail and I started exploring more after that, and I think he was looking for other people to add to our group. We could go see if the hermit wants to join our band, I asked, and Gail laughed bitterly as he pointed to his stomach. Maybe give him a chance to finish what he started too. I wasn't surprised to hear that the hermit had been the one to stab him, but I did wonder why he never traveled. We never saw him while we were out getting things, and we avoided his little corner like the plague. FF was strictly off limits, and I now realized I had gotten off very lucky in our exchange. I don't know how long I spent with Gale, but it felt like years. I know I say that a lot, but it's hard to convey how strange time is on that side. Time is something I'm used to counting, used to hoarding like a dragon, but here it isn't something I have to think about. What's more, I don't know if anyone is even getting these updates, and if they are, how quickly or slowly they're getting them. Are they coming in daily? Weekly? Are you reading this year's from each message? Are your children seeing them and having vague memories of something their parents told them when they were very small? Are all the Dollar Generals, beyond or otherwise, stones beneath the foundation of some other store? Does the name mean anything to those who may or may not be reading it? I don't know. I write these updates because it feels right. I write them because I feel like I should. I've gotten pretty good at traveling now. I can travel back and forth, carry supplies, hold things in my hand and travel, change my clothes and bring them back with me. And it makes me proud and a little afraid. With two of us, Gale and I have used some of the dolly loaders to move the shelves around in our hub. We've opened up the floor plans and now we have all this space for activities. I know, cheesy, but it's a classic. I've started keeping a journal of the different Dollar Generals and the beyond so that I can remember which ones are which. Here's a few store FF designation dangerous, highly, food none people one themed destroyed home of the crazy hermit. Beware this store. The shelves are bare of food. The hermit has hoarded it all somewhere safe. Could be secrets here, but they will be hard to find. Store JJ designation dangerous, moderate, food minimal people none theme waste disposal where we drop out waste. A fire took out most of the store a long time ago. The food here is all non-perishable stacked up in the back. Known location where the miasma comes out. Store T designation dangerous, low moderate, food plentiful strange people. None shadow creatures a possibility themed strange human meat market. This is the place where you may encounter shadow creatures. The shelves contain what appears to be human meat and the store smells like coppery. My research partner claims to have been accosted by these creatures, so proceed with caution. Stuff like that. I'm working on a more complete study of them. Now that I can take my notes and things with me without putting them on my phone, which will run out of space eventually. And I'm hoping to make a complete study of the DGBs. That's all for now. I'll shoot you an update when we have one. Sitting here writing this out. Listening to Gale snore. It's nice to have someone to talk to and just be with. I hope it's something that will last. Hey everyone. Hope you're still reading these or even seeing them. It's been an interesting little journey so far and I thought it might be past time for an update. Gale and I have been traversing the stores, getting supplies and mapping the different setups. And I've seen more stores in the short time I've been with Gale than I had in all the time I was on my own. I've seen places where the shelves are made of smoke. I've seen places where the ceiling and floor are reversed. And I've even seen stores I think might be on another planet. The languages vary in many of them, and some of them aren't even dialects I think are native to Earth. I've made some notes on them and I hope to write them down for you a little later. But for now I have to tell you about something that's led us to think we might not be the only ones who can travel through intent. We had gone back to KK, practicing my movements, and I was getting ready to go to another one when Gale stopped me. Something is wrong, he said, looking around. He was looking around as if expecting to see something obvious, but the answer wasn't quite that simple. The store wasn't what you would call in any kind of order, and it reminded me of the store I had trashed. Shelves were moved, things were tossed about, and the mess was everywhere. Gale could talk about not wrecking the stores, but it appeared he had done just that to his own first stop. As such, it took us a couple of minutes to notice that the sign in the window was missing. Someone had taken it down and torn it in half. Gale looked at the pieces in confusion, not sure what to make of it, but looked to the break room as if the culprit would still be in there. They weren't, but they had left their handiwork there as well. They had ripped the bulletin board down and smashed it in the floor. Gale stood looking at it like someone had desecrated a grave, and I could see him trembling in barely contained rage. "Who's done this?" he whispered, his voice full of pain. "Who has torn down my board?" He picked it up, checking over the ruined front. As I started looking for clues, there wasn't much to go off. But I did find a couple of things that the perpetrator had left behind. There was a scrap of cloth that had gotten caught in the door when whoever it was had left. There was a shoe print on the wall under the spot where the board had been, the tread visible, as if it had been made by something gross. The last tied it all together, and the smell of it made me gag a little as it hit me. Someone had taken a dump in the floor near the manager's desk and then trod through it on their way out the door. Friggin' animal, I said, covering my nose as I took a step back. I bumped into Gale then, and he seemed to have seen it too. He took the bulletin board back with him, but the damage was definitely done. I asked him if he had any idea who could have done this, but he didn't seem to have an answer. He sat looking at the board, the cork board the only reminder of his lost friends, and I wondered if he was going to be okay. Someone, or something, had gone in and wrecked his remembrance plaque. I say something because as far as we knew, we were the only people who could travel with any accuracy. If there were others, then why hadn't we found them yet? I sat with him for a little while, hoping he would snap out of it. After a while, though, I decided to leave him to his thoughts. I'd go and find something to make to cheer him up, a nice meal or something sweet, and hopefully he'd be back to his old self. I was heading to WWW, a very special place that I discovered before meeting Gale but didn't entirely understand. When I first came to it, the floor didn't feel right, and the whole place smelled like food. When something dripped onto me as I stood studying it, I immediately went through again and stepped out onto XX. I told Gale about it after we met, and he laughed and offered to take me there. When he showed me the true nature of the place, though, I understood what a cool store I had run from. Here, I'll show you my journal entry on it. Maybe that will shed some light on the situation. WDU store designation low to no danger people none themed desert shop. WW is a store made entirely out of dessert items. The shelves are made of chocolate, the floors of marzipan, and the ceiling drips with endless whipped cream. Everything there is edible, all the packages, the products, even the walls and furniture are fit for consumption. It's a great place to find a sweet treat. Pretty cool, right? There really is a store for everyone. I closed my eyes and prepared to step through, wanting to grab something sweet. But as I stepped through, I thought I had made a mistake. I still stepped into the wrong Dollar General about 20% of the time. I'm far from perfect. But as the overwhelming smell of chocolate assaulted my nostrils, I realized I had gone to the right place after all. The walls, the shelves, the floor. They were all still made of confection, but their composition had changed drastically. Most of the shelves lay in chocolate shambles. The packages that were uneaten had been scattered or stomped on, and their contents were spread across the floor. The packages left smears across the ground, and the smears were worked deep into the marzipan. The ceiling was untouched, but it was a little bit out of reach. The mess was impressive, like something a wild animal might do when cornered and trying to escape. And I started looking for a source of all this destruction. It seemed familiar somehow, like a place I had seen before. And I felt the hairs prickle on my neck as I went. I found a candy cane of all things lying by the base of a shelf and held it firmly between my hands as I went deeper into the store. As I rounded an aisle, I saw something scuttle out of sight. As my foot came down in an extra thick splat of whipped cream, I heard the skitter of something that ran along on all fours. I kept checking my peripherals, listening for the subtle scrape of feet. And when something finally lunged at me, I brought the hooked end of the candy bludgeon around and cracked the end on the face of my attacker. I brandished the broken tip, ready to fight whatever had come for me. But it was the last thing I expected to find sprawled on the floor. It was him, the hermit. He was righting himself, getting up on his hands and knees and hissing at me like a wild animal. His grimy clothes were smeared with chocolate and food, and his hands were caked with the store's leavings. He seemed more feral than he had the last time I'd seen him, and when he threatened to lunge again, I shoved the broken end of the candy cane at him, and he scampered back smartly. "Get back," I yelled, and for a wonder he did. He ran for the bathroom and plunged through the door, leaving the store in disarray and leaving me with questions. I traveled to XX, following on his heels, but he was nowhere to be found. There was no way that he could travel like Gale and I could, but I suppose that would explain how he had gone to Gale's old store and messed up his board. It seemed impossible. The guy was crazy, But the more I thought about it, the more it seemed like it had to be him. Who else could it be? We'd encountered no one besides the hermit, and if it wasn't him, then the prospects seemed even more fearful. I went back to Deb Zero to give Gale the bad news and found him seated at the desk we'd put together and fixing his sign. I ran into the hermit. I told him when he didn't look up. What the hell were you doing in FF in the first place? He wasn't in FF, I said, hesitating a little as he looked up in confusion. I was in WWW. He's made a real mess of it. Gale sat back and I could see that he had recreated the board as it had been when I'd first seen it. The warnings, the story, the pages of remembrance to his old friends. They had all been lovingly recreated, and it did my heart good to see it restored. It deserved to be here. Anyway, IT was important to Gale and we should have protected it. It doesn't make sense, Gale said. He's never shown any inclination about leaving before. He's always stayed in FF for as long as I've known him. Are you sure about that? I asked. When I showed up, there wasn't a lot of food left, and there's no way he's been living there all this time without a source of food. Gale shrugged. I never thought about it like that. Mostly I just avoid FF because that's where I've always encountered him. I guess he must be traveling. But how does he know how to get back is what I want to know. It's not impossible, but he's about half crazy. You can't tell me that a guy like that can figure out how to travel with any real destination. I done know, I said. How long has he been here? Anyway. He was the first person I encountered when I set out traveling, and I had been traveling for quite some time when I met him. I don't know if he was here before me, but I suspect that he might have been. I guess maybe he wasn't always crazy, but that's just speculation. Any rate, if he's wrecking up the stores, then we need to stop him. Like I told you once, there's no proof that the store, or the resources they hold, are infinite. If we're going to survive here, then we need to stop him from making that harder. What's the plan then? I asked. But that's where today's story ends. Gale and I are creating a plan to stop the old guy from wrecking up the stores, but it's something we have to approach carefully. He's crazy and dangerous, and if we don't want to get hurt or killed, then we can't go in half-cocked. Gale has started keeping a close eye on our Dollar General, and we've started going into other stores with weapons. If he attacks us, we'll be ready, hopefully, and we can take him alive. As promised, though, here are a couple of excerpts from my store drawer journal. Upside down store, designation low, danger, people, none, theme, upside down. This store is like a regular store, only upside down. The shelves stay on the ceiling and the food doesn't fall off them and come up, so there must be some sort of weird gravity. Gravity doesn't seem to have reversed for us. However, us. So we walk on the ceiling and find all the shelves unreachable. Gale. However, suggested using a step ladder, and it's possible to reach high enough to pick some of the items down to us. The place makes me dizzy if I spend too much time there, and it's a real trip. S Street Store, designation moderate people, shadow drivers, theme street, fair shops is a perfectly normal street, with bay booths set up that have items. It's all still inside. But the ground is concrete, and there are garbage cans and street lamps and graffiti in odd areas. The only real danger present is that sometimes cars drive up the road part of the street. They don't go very fast and they're not hard to get out of the way of. But if they hit you, it could kill you or hurt you. The shadow people who drive them look like living shadows and they don't get out, so they aren't any trouble. As long as you stay out of the center of the street, then you should be fine. The food is normal, but aside from shelves, there are also these odd little food stalls that just seem to have cooked food in them. You shout what you want into the stalls, and if they cook it, then you can just watch it make itself. It's wild, but a nice little change up from the norm. The stalls have a finite amount of resources, but if they run out of food, then they put out a closed sign. There are 8 streets and they have sidewalks beside the shelves. The cars don't seem to come from anywhere in particular and don't seem to go anywhere either. The exit is a tunnel with a crossbow blocking it off. I've talked to Gale about going into the tunnel to see what's on the other side, but he is staunchly against it. We spent some time making plans, but very little was decided on. The hermit had been dealt with. That much was clear, but it was the house that kept eluding us. We could take him alive, but then we'd have to guard him. We could kill him, but none of us were sure we could kill someone. He had to be stopped. But how could we do it? First thing we have to do is find him, Gail said. If he can travel, then he might be anywhere. We need to track him down and see where he is. If he's going back, then FF would be a good place to start. True, Gail said. If nothing else, we might find out more about him. What's to know? He's a crazy old dude, I said, adding a length of rope to my bag. If we were going to his lair, then there was a good chance we could set a trap for him. True, but was he always? I don't know how long this old guy's lived in the Dollar General beyonds. He could have come here when they were still called J. L. Turner and Son. Hell? Crazy dude could be Cal Turner for all I know. Who? I asked, not having a clue what he was talking about. Sorry, I don't know why I would have expected you to know the store's history. Cal Turner took over after his father died and officially named the store Dollar General after that. Word was that he went missing sometime after opening the first one. Just stepped into one of his own stores and was never seen again. His son ran them when I worked there. But I suppose he'd be an old man by now. Cal and Carl, his son, looked a lot alike, and it took the company years to admit that the owner was gone. Some people say he just became a recluse. But I knew managers who were close to the family, and they swore that the rumors were true. Anyway, I doubt the old man is Cal. He'd been older than hell and likely twice as crazy. I didn't like to think about another lost soul trapped here, but it did make me wonder how many others could be prisoners here. I have no clue how long I've been here, but I know it hasn't been very long when compared to Gail, and Gail believed the old man had been here longer than that. If people didn't age, then who was to say that Cal Turner might not be in here somewhere? Who was to say that there might not any number of people traversing the infinite? Or not so infinite? Dollar Generals, if there were. However, then why hadn't they met any of them? Have you ever met anyone else? I asked before I could think better of it. Besides you, Gail said, smiling a little as he thought about it. No one other than the hermit and Colleen. I guess. He got a little speculative then. Thinking about his friends always made him quiet and thoughtful, and I hated that. Gail was a good dude, and I didn't think he should be inundated with the guilt over people he had no control over. He had done his best, plain and simple, and they had done what people do. Hey, I asked suddenly as I slid a cold coffee drink into my backpack. If he's going through the doors, then shouldn't he stop being crazy? Gail cocked his head at me. What do you mean? Well, you said that all injuries and damage to clothes and stuff are fixed when you go through the door again. If he's rattled from his time here, then shouldn't he be I dunno, reset or something when he goes through? Gail pulled his bottom lip into his mouth, chewing it as he thought the question over. The doors had always healed anything that was wrong with us in the past. Whether it was a wound or ripped clothing, it always fixed us, and we were pretty reliant on it for clothes and general fixes. If the crazy hermit was able to travel while remaining in his wrong mind, then maybe the doors didn't reset you as much as we had thought. Hell, Rud. I don't know. Maybe he's messed up enough in the head that he thinks that's just how he is. A certain amount of what we do with the doors only happens in our heads. I don't claim to understand it all. Sometimes it works differently for different people. It works the way it works for you because that's how it works for me. And I'm the one who taught you. He may have learned differently, so it works differently for him. I guess. Maybe. We can ask him when we grab him. I nodded, trying to ignore that he had called me Rude again. Rud, or Rudy, had been his son, and the more comfortable he got with me, the more often he slipped up. I didn't mind. Not really. If he thought of me as his son, then I was okay with that. No, it was Gail who seemed to mind. Even now he had realized what he had said, and his face had gotten stormy. I knew he was still looking for Rudy, still looking for all of them, but the chances of finding them seemed to dwindle the longer they stayed gone. Rudy had gone after another of Gail's original group, but it seemed that no one came back from the ceiling. I was already trapped in Dollar General beyond. I wasn't in a huge hurry to get trapped somewhere else. Got everything? Gail asked, pulling on his pack and taking up his club. We had never really carried weapons. Not like this. But after finding the hermit in other stores but his, we had started taking them with us. We had taken wooden chair legs and hammered nails into them. They weren't very sturdy. They were mostly spiky particle board. but they would do in a pinch. We had taken some of the hoodies off the rack and sewn cardboard into them. They weren't great, but they would do too. The cardboard wouldn't do a lot, but it was the best we could manage. Ready, I said, making the chunky sweater as comfortable as I could before we set off. I wanted to start in FF, but Gail said we should check a few key places first. I have some safe houses that I want to make sure he hasn't hit yet. It's nothing impressive, just some food and things that I've come across in my travels. I made notes as we went, and here is where we went for my journal. It's starting to come along, but I know it's a drop in the ocean in the long run. B. Normal fall store. Designation low danger people 0 theme fall decor. B is a perfectly normal Dollar General that's been set for fall. It had pumpkins and scarecrows, and some of the Halloween decorations are there, but not all. It has some seasonal items, but it seems to be the start of autumn selection and doesn't contain as much as it would by the end of October. Gail had apparently been here before and left a go bag. He went to the manager's office and opened up the red box that usually held the fire extinguisher. Instead, there was a backpack that Gail took out and unzipped. He looked over the things inside, talking under his breath as made sure it was all still there. Okay, I didn't think you would have come this far, but it was a possibility. Let's go to the next one. We did a quick check before heading out, but everything appeared to be in place. The things I had used were gone, but nothing else seemed to be taken or moved. We still weren't sure that he could take things with him. But as we moved on, we were in full data collection mode. Night store, designation moderate danger people 0 theme, a dark store with lamps. D is a shadowy place, and one of the few stores without the buzzing overhead lights. It's lit by tall metal street lamps, and the light they make doesn't go far. It does not appear to have a ceiling. Any attempt to shine a light up there reveals nothing, and Gail thinks that it's likely it's there to simulate the night sky. Some of the shelves are pushed over, and I suspect that the miasma can come and go here freely. We have never encountered him here, but it seems likely we could, and we do not linger here. Gail hit the ground running when we got to None of us like to be here, but he felt like it might be a good place to hide something because of the environment. The whole store was pitch black and lit by these interspaced lampposts that cast a yellow glow over the shelves. He reached between two shelves and took out a duffel bag, handing me the light as he went through it on the run. He didn't like coming here any more than I did, and when he had established that everything was there, he zipped it, and we headed out. There was a sound as we came to the door, something like a moaning wind from the shadowy ceiling, and we were through before we could discover what it was. Cave store, designation highly danger people 0 theme, a store inside a cave. Is a store inside a cave. As the name entails, the lighting is glowing fungus that baths everything in a mysterious glow. The shelves are carved into the stone, and some of the items are made of rock. In the middle of the store is a pool of water that is okay to drink from, but contains a monster. Gail says it's a big crocodile or something, and that it comes out to walk around on occasions. It chased us the last time we were there, and it's easily 10 feet long. There are bats that hang from the ceiling, though Gail isn't sure what they eat since there are no bugs here. He's never seen the movie either, so no one is sure what they can do. The food here is refrigerated by the cave. That is 65 at all times, and nothing seems to spoil or go bad. We came into the cave store looking for the creature who lived here. We had been here a few times. The store had a great selection of mushroom, and last time we had come face to face with the gator who lived here. I hadn't really believed Gail when he told me about it, but it was hard to deny when you were face to face with the monster. He had a long snout like a crocodile, and his scales seemed to shift through a series of colors as he came hissing after us. He was slow, thankfully, and we got out before he could catch us. But I suppose that put my rule about no living things in the dab into question. He was in his pond today. At least we assumed he was. And Gail pushed a rock aside as he took out another backpack that he checked over. Most of these bags had things like first aid kits, non-perishable foods, and tool kits that could be used to set up traps or snares. Gail had set them up just in case he needed to secure another store or travel to Infinite for a while, and I was sure that these weren't the only ones. Gail had been here long enough to set up safe houses in several stores, and the one in Jab 0 was just the first in a long line, I was sure. Okay, Gail sighed, pushing the rock back into place. He hasn't found any of these. I can't think that he has any real skill with travel, But if we haven't come up on him, then he must have enough to go back and forth. Are we ready to check FF then? I asked, still feeling that it should have been our first destination. Not yet, Gail said. Let's check a few random places. If he's just traveling willy-nilly, then we might find him somewhere near FF. I nodded, seeing the logic. And as we set off, we went to GG first. GG was the place I had stopped after my initial encounter with the oldster, and it was a store set up for Mother's Day shopping. The whole place smelled of flowers, and I really enjoyed coming here. It was nice, and the whole atmosphere seemed to glow a light pink. GG was fine, but as we moved into Heish, we could tell that someone had been there. It was a normal store, except that all the words were reversed. It was like a weird mirror store, and it looked like someone had ripped open a couple of bags of chips and ate them right off the floor. They were scattered like a rat had been at them, and though we weren't absolutely sure that it was him at first, we found more of his leavings down one of the aisles and decided that it was a good enough calling card for our little friend. We checked a few others, and some of them bore similar signs of his visits. Food scattered, trash tossed around, and a nice healthy dump left 9 times out of 10. Now are we ready to check FF? I asked, tired of looking at scat and stepping on chips. I suppose we should, Glenn said after finding his calling card in another store. It seems unlikely we'll just run up on him if he's moving so sporadically. Gale seemed like he didn't really want to go to the hermit's lair, but it was our best bet of finding him at this point. We stepped out of the cave and into the dump, the hermit's store looking as desolate as ever. The floor crackled under our feet as the wrappers and garbage crunched underfoot. He had been just dropping his trash in the same manner that he dropped his waste, and the whole store stank with a mingling of rotten food and human crap. I didn't want to be here either, but we had to go make sure he wasn't hanging out and waiting for company. We stayed close, searching every shadowy nook and dirty cranny, but we couldn't find the old man hiding anywhere. Okay, it was a good idea, but I guess he's out. Come on, let's try somewhere else. We were leaving the back area, near the automotive section, when my foot struck something and I stumbled. I immediately wished I had been looking where I was going, as I fell face first into a pile of filthy rags. My nose came into contact with the worst smells I had ever experienced. Imagine old sweat, unwashed clothes, dirty bathroom aroma, and a hobo camp on a hot day, and you're close. I came staggering up, trying to get away from it as quickly as I could. But when my hands fell on a plastic holder with what felt like paper in it, I reached back and pulled it out too. It was a backpack. One shoulder strap ripped from the bag, and inside was a journal. It was old and cracked, the leather extremely abused by the owner's hands in many openings. The paper inside was curled at the corners, and there was a bookmark inside of a happy car with a fish in its mouth. The handwriting inside was neat, a meticulous script that had been written with care, and I doubted that the crazy old man had done it. There was a lump in the middle of it, and I thought it might be a button or a name tag. But I heard Gale grunt as something came screaming from atop a nearby shelf. The old hermit had returned, and it appeared that we had found something he treasured. Gale turned to catch him, but he landed on him and knocked the wind out of him. The old man was off and capering towards me, his teeth bared and his face a mask of crazed rage. He rushed me like a linebacker, knocking me over as his long, dirty fingers closed around my neck. My air was instantly cut off, his nails digging into the back of my neck as he screamed and gibbered in his weird language. I tried to fight back. I tried to push him off, but he was solid for someone so old. Shoving at him was like shoving a boulder, and he leaned into me as I was slowly strangled. Black spots started appearing in my vision as his greasy finger choked me to the point of unconsciousness. I wondered if the door would bring me back to life when he inevitably collapsed my windpipe. Would Gale be allowed to drag me back through it? Or would this crazed loner simply bite my throat out and eat me right here, when his blood splattered my face? I supposed I'd never get to find out. As his fingers loosened, I could see Gale standing behind him, panting as he released the handle of the weapon. The nails were sticking out of the hermit's skull as he shook and gurgled, and when he slipped to the ground, his blood made dark stains on the blankets that had been his bed. Gale stepped away, shaking as badly as the old man had been, and when he ran for the door, I followed after him. When I came through and dabbed, but he didn't. I knew something was wrong. Now I'm left here with just the journal for company. feeling like maybe we've crossed a line that neither of us were ready for. I'll keep you all posted. But for now, I think I need to go and think about what's happened today. Hey everyone. I hope these are still coming through. My cell phone hasn't needed a charge in a while, and seems to be stuck on 70%. It's a shame. One more and I'd definitely have grounds for some internet points. Hi. It still displays weird times and dates, and no one has answered any of my messages or commented on any of these posts. At least on my end. Gail hasn't come back yet, but it's only been a little bit since the thing with the hermit. No, that's not right. It's only been a little bit since we were forced to kill the old man who resided in FF. I've started reading the journal, but I know now that it isn't his. The journal belongs to someone named C, and I suspect that Gail will be very interested in seeing it when he gets back. I say this because I'm pretty sure that the writer is Colleen. I'll write down a few of the entries and let you judge for yourself. But it sounds like this person has gone farther than even Gail has been. Day 1. This is the first day I've started keeping this journal. I figured out how to take it with me, and I'm experimenting to see if I can take other things with me as well. I had to find the gaudiest one I could find. I'm pretty sure it's got unicorns on it, so that I could visualize it. And that seems to be the secret. I kind of accidentally stumbled across it when I was going through one of the doors with a candy bar in my hand. I could see myself eating it, and when I stepped through, it came too. I was halfway through the Snickers before it hit me that I still had it. Everything else I had tried to take with me was left behind, and I have the feeling this might be the start of something big. Day 2, I visited 12 new Dollar Generals today. It's weird. Some of them have odd things in them, futuristic things that I've never heard of. I found one that sold cigarettes today. Can you imagine a DG that sells tobacco? The tobacco, however, turned out to be these weird vaporizers. It still gave me nicotine, but it was definitely a head rush. I hadn't had a smoke in. God, it's been a while. It was a nice treat. Day 5, I saw a store where everything was upside down today. It made me kind of dizzy. Day 7, I managed to take a backpack with me to a new store today. All the stuff inside disappeared, for some reason. But the backpack came with me, as well as my journal, so that's a start. Day 8, I managed to take things with me to another store today. Normally it helps if you visualize all of them, but it's better if you just see the bag when you take them with you. No clue why, but it seems to work. I'll have to experiment with it some more. I had to go through 7 stores before I got it to travel with me. Some of them are pretty weird, but the one thing missing from them are people. I haven't seen a single soul since I left Gail behind, and I wake up sometimes hoping to see him standing over me. I miss him. I miss the others. I miss the sound of people talking, laughing, just existing. The stores are much too quiet for my liking. When I read that, I had to go back and read it again. Once I read the name Gail, I knew this had to be his lost friend, if she was alive, though. Then how had the old hermit gotten her journal, given the reception we had always gotten from him? It was unlikely that she had been welcomed warmly. Had he killed her? Were her bones part of the garbage that littered the store? I had to read more. Day 10, I saw weird shadows today when I went through the door. They were walking around a weird store, and there were stalls of meat just sitting around. The meat looked very questionable, and when one of the shadows grabbed me, I pulled free and made a run for it. I suspect the bins had human meat in them. Day 11 came upon a dark store lit by lamps. I didn't like it, so I didn't stay long. It made me think of the thing that took Margot and wonder if it lived there. That entry sort of sealed it for me, and I skimmed ahead a little to see if I could find some place new. Day 19 found a weird store with a burnt-out ceiling near the door. The whole place seemed weird, and I don't like anywhere with an exposed ceiling. I moved on quickly, and the next one surprised me. It was underwater. I came out swimming, and though I panicked a little, I didn't drown. I swam around, seeing a few fish. But I saw something big as I got near the back and made my way out. I expected I would have to dry out when I came through, but my clothes and my things were dry when I came out in a Christmas-themed store. Day 20 still in the Christmas store, but I've been thinking about trying to travel backwards. There has to be a way to go back, doesn't there? Gail hasn't caught up. Maybe he never left, and I don't know how long I've been traveling. Days? Weeks? Years? Who knows? It doesn't seem to matter. Time is weird here, and I can't really tell how long I've been here. My wristwatch just blinks 8888 at me, but when I go to another store, it always appears on my arm when I take it off. Maybe I'll experiment a little and see if I can go back the way I came. Day 30 after 10 days of trial and error. I finally did it. I was picturing the store I went to once. The store made of candy and sweets. And when I walked through, I was there. I was so happy that I jumped for joy. Now I just have to make it back to the original store so I can see what happened to Gale. I hope he's still alive. Day 45, no matter how hard I try, I can't seem to go back. I've been trying for days, well, for periods after sleep, and it's no good. The store was kind of unremarkable, and I can't seem to get a good picture of it in my mind. I have to keep trying. I have to keep picturing it. I know I can do it. I know I can make it. I have to go back. I have to find him. There were a lot of entries after that. The writer, Celine, either went forward through the loop or went back to similar DGBs. She was steadfast in her efforts, wanting to see Gale again, but the more she tried, the more discouraged she got. She started writing about how it might be impossible to go back to places you had started at. She began to wonder if there was an end to the stores. Slowly, she lost track of time. The days stopped mattering. The days ran together, and her contemplations began to pile up. She mused a lot, perfected her traveling, and eventually, she was rewarded. Today I did IT. I went back to the first store. I remembered this end cap we had made. Meet the team, where we had posted things about ourselves. It was just pictures and stories and little personal blurbs, but it gave me something to focus on, and I was suddenly standing in the old store. I used to hate when the flash of Margot's instant camera would catch me off guard, but when I saw that board with all our pictures and stories on it, I started crying. We had hoped that someone would find it if anything happened to us, but it looks like I had used it as a way back home. I expected to see Gale sitting there, but he wasn't. I figured he would look up and tell me I had just left and ask why I had come back so soon. Instead, he was gone. I did see his sign, however. And I went to the break room and found his memorial for us. He thinks I'm lost, just like Rudy and Kenneth and Margot. But now I'm looking for him. I have to find him. The stores can't be that numerous. There has to be an end. And if anyone has found it, I'm sure it's Gale. He'll be looking for it, or me, as we speak. And I have to find him so I can team up and help him find the end. I felt myself tear up a little as I read it. She had done it. She had come back to where it all started. If she was looking, though, how had she never found Gale? The stores were numerous, but they had to have crossed paths at some point. I began to wonder how long Gale had been gone, and I worried that he might not come back. Then I would be alone too. I looked back down, flipping through the next few pages as Colleen sat and waited to see if Gale would come back. I knew he hadn't, but it was interesting to see his travels from a different point of view. Celine eventually left too, but she left him a note on his bulletin board so that he would know she was looking for him. That struck me as weird, because Gale had never mentioned seeing signs of her. When he talked about Colleen, it was always in the past tense. He didn't expect to find her, and if he had ever found any sign of her, he had kept it to himself. What else could he have been keeping to himself? I wondered. I flipped through a few more pages before landing on something that seemed interesting. Today I have officially been to every store between the start and the Christmas store, and I haven't found Gale. I have seen sign of Gale, but I haven't found him. I have decided to press on. These stores can't go on forever, and maybe if I find the end, I'll find Gale. It's worth a shot. Today I've been to so many stores I have lost count. Time means nothing anymore. I've started carrying more food. However, when I find it, because not all the stores have actual food, I went to a store on my travels that had nothing but plastic food on the shelves. There was another with rotten food in the packages. Some of them just sell the same item duplicated 1,000 times. Some of them don't sell anything. They're just empty shelves and awful music. There is no end in sight, but I'm not giving up. Today, 30 stores today. Nothing edible today. I was attacked by bats in a large cave. I made it out, but just barely. Today I found a store where the products were made of people, and the people made of food shopped there. I'm not ashamed to say that I ate a few of them when they tried to corner me. I hadn't actually eaten in 3 or 4 stops and my supplies are all but gone. One of them was made of popcorn. His bled cola. Another was made of celery and he bled ranch dressing. After I bit and savaged a couple of them, they moved, but I was still hungry. I ate 4.5 of them before fleeing. I've got an arm made of prosciutto in my back and it's oozing Swiss cheese. Hopefully it will keep me. Today I saw some weird letters on the ground today. They told me I was in XX. I don't know what that means, but the store looked like a little Japanese village and you could get food there. It was like a theme park kind of. And there was a bathhouse where I took my first bath in a very long time. I ate and ate and ate until I thought I would burst and then soaked and slept, and when it was finally time to go again, I was rested and refreshed. Today I saw a dog today. He didn't appear to be in distress, but it was odd to see him. He followed me through the doors for a bit, whining for pets and seeming happy to see me. But eventually when I lay down to sleep, he left and went his own way. Poor thing can only move forward. What a frightening prospect. Today I've gone back to my original store. I'm not sure where I went, but if it's the end then I don't want to go any further. I stood looking into the bathroom door, something I've done 1,000 times before. But on the other side was something different. The store I was in was a winter wonderland complete with snow, but the other side was pitch black. Things were moving in there. And the longer I looked, the more I realized they were very large but far away. I don't know what that was or what they were, but I couldn't bring myself to walk through that door. I started crying, suddenly just wanting to be home. And when I stepped through, I found myself right back where I started. It should have been demoralizing, it should have completely destroyed me, but it didn't. Probably because I know that I can go back to the door anytime I want to. Probably because I know it will be there when I am ready, and I think that's the worst part of all. I'm going to stay here for a while and consider what to do next. I hope Gale finds me, but I have long ago given up hope of finding him. That was the last entry, and I had no idea how long ago it had been. Behind that page, stuffed between the next 2 like a bookmark, was a plastic name badge with Salim on it and faded press-on letters. Gale still hasn't returned and I'm starting to get worried. For that matter, how long had I been sitting here reading it? I wanted him to see this. I want him to know that his friend is still out there. I can't imagine what's keeping him, but I have a bad feeling about it. What if he doesn't come back? What if killing that hermit pushed him over the edge somehow? What if he blames me? I don't know what to do, but as I sit here writing this, I feel my eyes getting heavy. It's been a long, well, not day, but it's been long enough. Hope I still can.